Chapter 652. Yi Xian turned around. Not far in front of him, there was a shadow standing. The shadow floated in front of him and he couldn't see the body clearly. The shadow suddenly said, "Primal chaos." Just at that moment, a sword hum rang out from behind Yi Xian. In the next moment, a sword light slashed the shadow. Hong! The entire phantom trembled violently, and then it retreated explosively by almost 3 kilometers. At that moment, 7 stood beside Yi Xian. In the distance, the shadow said softly, "What a sharp sword. I never thought that a small chaotic universe would have such a monster like you." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Shao Qi. At that moment, 7 and Yi Xian drew their swords at the same time. Wang wang. 2 sword hum charged into the sky. Boom! As Yi Xian and Shao Qi's swords descended, the silhouette instantly retreated over 3 kilometers. At the same time, 2 3-kilometers-long spatial rifts appeared in front of Yi Xian and Shao Qi. They were forcefully slashed open by the sword. At the same time, the shadow became more and more illusory. It was obvious that it wasn't the main body. Yi Xian said, "Let's go." 7 nodded. The 2 of them turned around and left. When the 2 of them left, the shadow completely disappeared. But behind Yi Xian and 7, a teleportation formation suddenly appeared. In the next moment, it started to shake violently. Seeing this, 7 frowned. Someone is forcefully breaking open space. Forcefully breaking open space. Yi Xian looked at the teleportation formation. "We should be there soon." 7 nodded. "Then let's wait." Yi Xian nodded. "Okay." The 2 of them stood not far from the teleportation formation. Not long later, a black-clothed middle-aged man appeared on the teleportation formation. After the black-clothed man appeared, his gaze shot towards Yi Xian and Shao Qi like a sharp arrow. Just as he was about to speak, Shao Qi and Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and 2 beams of sword light shot towards him. The black-robed man narrowed his eyes and a cold light flickered in them. "How dare you!" As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and punched out. Rumble. A powerful force poured out from his fist like a flood. At this moment, 2 sword lights arrived. Rumble. The space around him cracked, and the black-robed man retreated rapidly, while countless sword lights slashed around him. Within the sword light, a shocked voice suddenly rang out. "You, soon." The voice stopped abruptly. At that moment, the sword light disappeared. 7 and Yi Xian turned around and left. Behind them, the black-clothed man had already disappeared. On the way, Yi Xian asked, "Are we going back?" Shao Qi shook his head. "We can't go back. We've already alerted them. If they aren't stupid, they won't let ordinary experts come over." Yi Xian said, "Then shall we continue forward?" 7 nodded. "All right." Soon, the 2 of them disappeared not far away. Continue forward. Yi Xian didn't plan to go back either because if he went back now, he would just be sitting ducks. Compared to sitting ducks, he preferred to take the initiative to attack. The 2 of them rode their swords towards the depths of the starry sky. On the way, Yi Xian started to check his trophies. By then, he had 430 million divine crystals, 40 Dao realm treasures, 80 bottles of all kinds of super elixirs, and a lot of miscellaneous items. Dao realm treasures. One had to say that Yi Xian was very excited at this moment. Because he had too much wealth right now. He couldn't not feel smug. It could be said that this wealth could allow him to not worry about swords for a period of time. Apart from that, the demon lord had refined 6 demon corpses for him. The combat strength of these 6 demon corpses far exceeded that of Emperor realm experts. It should be said that their combat strength far exceeded when they were alive. This was because the demon lord had personally refined them. At the same time, he had also added devil blood into the 6 demon corpses. This devil blood made the bodies of these demon corpses even more powerful. On the whole, he had both money and manpower now. Thinking about something, Yi Xian looked toward 7. 7. The next time we meet others, don't destroy their bodies with one sword, okay? 7 looked towards Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian grinned. Their bodies are useful to me. 7 nodded. Okay. Yi Xian smiled. 7. Do you really want to unify the four-dimensional universe? 7 was silent. Yi Xian looked towards 7. 7 said softly, I do want to, but God country's strength doesn't allow it. If I force it, even if I succeed, many people will die. Yi Xian nodded. If a war broke out between the two universes, there was no doubt that many people would die. Yi Xian asked, then, what are your plans? 7 said, let's deal with Xianhuang Great World first. Deal with Xianhuang Great World. Yi Xian smiled. He had to admit that Shaoqi had a kind of confidence, a temperament that gave people the feeling that nothing could be difficult for her. At this moment, 7 looked towards Yi Xian. You want to protect God Marshall City, right? Yi Xian nodded his head. 7 nodded her head. Then, our goal is the same. Yi Xian said, will we fail? 7 said, just do it, don't worry about the outcome. Just do it, don't worry about the outcome. Yi Xian kept silent. Right. As long as they tried their best, who knew what the outcome would be like? Just at that moment, 7 suddenly stopped. She raised her head and looked into the distance. In the starry sky, there was an ancient city. The ancient city stood in the starry sky like a crouching beast. City? Yi Xian looked towards the city gate. Above it, there were 3 black words, Prairie Flame City. Yi Xian said, let's go take a look. 7 nodded. In just a moment, Yi Xian and 7 came to the city gate. There were no guards there. Yi Xian and 7 walked towards the city gate. Very quickly, the two of them arrived. The city was really prosperous and there were many stalls on both sides of the streets. Stalls. Yi Xian was curious. He walked towards a black-robed man on the right. In front of him was a black sword. The sword was totally black and it looked really special. 7's eyes landed on the sword. Yi Xian looked towards the black-robed man. How much is this sword? The black-robed man said, 30 million god crystals. His voice was a little hoarse. 30 million god crystals. Yi Xian sized up the black sword and shook his head, too expensive. After saying that, he looked towards 7, let's go. 7 blinked her eyes, is it expensive? Yi Xian was speechless. This brat obviously didn't bargain at all. That made sense. She had been noble since young, so why would she bargain? Yi Xian looked towards the black-robed man, cheaper? This black sword was a Dao realm sword. What he lacked the most now was a Dao realm sword. The black-robed man shook his head. This sword was the sword of North Cloud Sword sect leader. Just that alone is already worth 30 million god crystals. North Cloud Sword sect leader? Yi Xian asked, who? The black-robed man looked towards Yi Xian. You don't know about North Cloud Sword sect? Yi Xian smiled, we came from a small place. The black-robed man didn't explain much. He looked towards Yi Xian, do you want it? Yi Xian pointed with his finger and a storage ring landed in front of the black-robed man. There were exactly 30 million god crystals in the storage ring. The black-robed man took the storage ring and turned around to leave. Yi Xian waved his right hand and the black sword flew into his hand. It was cold to the touch and a little bone-piercing. Yi Xian passed the sword to Shaoqi. Shaoqi took the sword and looked at it. At this moment, the black sword suddenly shook violently and turned into a beam of sword light that flew into the distance. Seeing this, Yi Xian and Shaoqi were both stunned. The sword wanted to escape. At that moment, 7 suddenly shouted, come back. The moment she said that, the black sword was covered by a streak of sword light. In the next moment, it returned to 7's hand. 7 looked at the sword in her hand. The black sword shook violently. It still wanted to escape. 7 was expressionless. Someone is summoning it. Yi Xian looked in the direction that the black-robed man left. That person just now. 7 nodded. Yi Xian and 7 suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, the two of them appeared in a corner of the city. In the corner, there was a black-robed man. The black-robed man's right hand was facing up and he was chanting something. Seeing Yi Xian and 7 suddenly appear, the black-robed man's expression changed. Yi Xian looked at the black-robed man. You sold it and then summoned it back. Your plan is really good. The black-robed man didn't say anything. He suddenly stepped forward and 2 streaks of sword light slashed towards Yi Xian and 7. Seeing the black-robed man suddenly attack, Yi Xian was slightly stunned. This guy was also a vicious person. The moment the black-robed man attacked, 7 suddenly slashed with her fingers. Chi. The 2 streaks of sword light instantly collapsed. At the same time, the black-robed man's chest was pierced by a streak of sword light. The black-robed man looked at 7 in disbelief. 7 looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't understand. What are you doing? 7 didn't say anything. She hooked her right hand and the storage ring on the black-robed man's hand flew to Yi Xian. Yi Xian, 7 said, let's go. Yi Xian nodded and left with 7. He didn't take the black-robed man's corpse because its level was too low and it didn't have the right to be refined into a demonic corpse. At that moment, the black-robed man opened his palm and a streak of sword light charged into the sky. Yi Xian said softly, he seems to be calling someone. 7 kept silent for a moment and then said, he is selling things and we are buying things. Why did he go back on his words? Yi Xian smiled, because of benefits. 7 looked at Yi Xian, is money very important? Yi Xian nodded, very important. 7 said softly, I think that money is the easiest thing to get. Yi Xian was speechless. Those words, 7 looked at Yi Xian, if you don't have it, then go to the God Kingdom treasury to get it. That is the wealth left by the past God Lords. It is our personal wealth and I have never used it. Yi Xian hesitated, this. How can I do that? 7 looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, since it is your good intentions, then if I don't accept it, then I won't be a good friend. Once we go back, I will find you. 7. P.S. If you want to act cool, you have to save up. If you don't have a script, you won't be able to act cool. Work hard to save up. Chapter 653. Yi Xian and 7 walked around the city and Yi Xian noticed that there were very few people. Moreover, most of them were here to sell things. There were basically no residents in the city. However, these roadside stalls weren't simple as they were basically selling Dao Realm treasures. During this period, he even bought 2 Dao Realm swords, which was quite a good harvest. After walking 1 round, Yi Xian and 7 chose to leave. The moment the 2 of them walked out of the city gates, they were stopped by 2 old men. The 2 of them held a long sword in their hands. It was a swordsman. One of them stared at Yi Xian and 7, you killed him. 7 nodded, I killed him. Do you have a problem with that? The old man squinted, aren't you a little too ruthless? 7 turned and looked at Yi Xian, didn't he deserve to die? Yi Xian said, he deserved to die. 7 looked at the old man, do you have a problem? The old man sneered, how arrogant. Then let this old man have a taste of the 2 of your moves. Old man. Just at that moment, 7 suddenly disappeared. Chi. Without any warning, a sword light pierced through the old man's brow. The old man's body froze on the spot. His eyes were wide open and they were filled with disbelief. Beside him, the other old man wanted to escape, but 7's sword was faster. Chi. The old man's head was instantly sliced off by the sword light. 7 waved her right hand and the 2 old men's spatial rings flew into her hand. She then passed them to Yi Xian, let's go. Yi Xian took the storage ring. He said after a slight hesitation, actually, I'm not a greedy person. 7 nodded. I know, you're just poor. Yi Xian, very quickly, the two of them left Prairie City and continued forward. In the city, Yi Xian and 7 found out that there was another space gathering point in Xianhuang Great World which was a little far from here. Therefore, the two of them didn't choose to ride on their swords. Instead, they rode on the Imperial Starship. On the Emperor Starship, 7 looked at the Emperor Starship beneath her feet and said, "This thing is not bad. After we return, lend it to me. I will let the craftsman sect study it and they should be able to create many." Yi Xian smiled and said, "All right." 7 looked into the distance and said softly, "The universe is huge." Yi Xian nodded. He had no idea how big the fourth-dimensional universe was. And above the fourth-dimensional universe, there was the unknown fifth-dimensional universe. It had to be said that humans were really tiny in this universe. However, when humans reached a certain level, the universe seemed insignificant in front of them. Not long after, Shao Qi and Yi Xian suddenly stopped. Not far in front of them, there was a mountain that was thousands of feet tall. The mountain was like an inverted sword, floating in the starry sky. In the surroundings of this mountain, there were cranes that flew by and there were people sitting on the backs of some cranes. Yi Xian said softly, "This should be a sect." 7 nodded. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Let's take a detour." As he said that, he controlled the Emperor Starship to fly to the right. At this moment, a young man suddenly appeared not far away from 7 and Yi Xian. The young man looked coldly at Yi Xian and 7. "Don't you know the rules of my Xianyan sect?" Yi Xian asked, "What rules?" The young man said coldly, "Without my Xianyan sect's permission, no outsider is allowed to approach my Xianyan sect's territory." Yi Xian nodded and smiled, "Sorry, we will leave now." However, the young man still blocked in front of them. Yi Xian looked at the young man who was expressionless. "What do you think my Xianyan sect is? That you can come and go as you please?" At this moment, a sword intense suddenly rushed into the sky from within Yi Xian's body. Wang! A sword hum shook the sky. Sword God! Seeing this scene, the young man's expression changed and he hurriedly bowed. "So it's a sword god, sorry for my disrespect." Yi Xian was silent. The young man hurriedly said again, "I was rude just now, please forgive me." Yi Xian said, "Can we leave now?" The young man hurriedly nodded, "Of course." Yi Xian and 7 were about to leave when an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and 7. Seeing the old man, the young man bowed slightly. "Elder Zong." Elder Zong nodded, "You may leave." The young man bowed again and turned to leave. Elder Zong looked at Yi Xian and 7 and smiled, "Both of you are sword gods at such a young age. You are truly geniuses." Yi Xian smiled, "Senior is overpraising us. I would like to ask Senior about something. How can we head to the Black-Yellow Great World Spatial Stronghold faster?" Elder Zong looked at Yi Xian. "You want to go to the spatial stronghold of the Black-Yellow Great World?" Yi Xian nodded. Elder Zong said solemnly, "That place is not a good place." Yi Xian smiled, "We are just going to take a look." Elder Zong said solemnly, "If both of you ride on the Emperor Starship, it will take at least half a month to reach there. Moreover, it will not be very peaceful along the way." Yi Xian asked, "Why do you say so?" Elder Zong said, "Because people from the Black-Yellow Great World have been appearing frequently in our cosmos recently. I am afraid they are up to something big." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian and 7, "Both of you, if you want to go to the stronghold of the Black-Yellow Great World, you can use my Immortal Cloud Sex teleportation array. It is very convenient and you can reach there in less than half a day." Yi Xian smiled, "Many thanks then." Elder Zong smiled faintly, "Both of you, follow me." With that said, he brought Yi Xian and 7 to Immortal Cloud Sect. One had to admit that this Immortal Cloud Sect was indeed very celestial. Clouds and mist lingered around it and the palace was exquisite and grand, looking like a paradise. In a short while, Yi Xian and 7 came to a training field in Immortal Cloud Sect. Elder Zong looked at Yi Xian and 7, "Please wait for a moment." With that said, he turned around and left. 7 said, "Something is not right." Yi Xian nodded with a playful smile on his lips. At this moment, the ground beneath Yi Xian and 7's feet suddenly shook violently. Immediately after, countless lightning bolts suddenly shot up from the ground and trapped 7 and Yi Xian like a cage. 7 was expressionless. Yi Xian looked into the distance. Elder Zong suddenly appeared, and behind him, there were 10 people. All of them were Emperor Realm experts. Elder Zong looked at Yi Xian and 7, "Both of you don't seem surprised at all." Yi Xian smiled, "If I didn't guess wrongly, you should know who we are." Elder Zong waved his right hand and a portrait appeared in front of Yi Xian. The person in the portrait was Yi Xian. Elder Zong looked at Yi Xian. "I heard that the 5th-dimensional treasure is in your hands." Yi Xian nodded, "Indeed." Elder Zong smiled, "I really didn't expect that you would actually come to my Immortal Cloud sect's territory. This is really heaven helping my Immortal Cloud sect." Yi Xian smiled, "How do you know that it isn't heaven that wants to exterminate your Immortal Cloud sect?" With that said, he stomped his right foot. Chi! A streak of sword light pierced through the air. This streak of sword light directly shattered those lightning bolts in front of him and then headed straight for Elder Zong. Elder Zong squinted his eyes and opened his palm. In his palm, a spear suddenly appeared. At the next moment, he took a step forward and the spear in his hand shot out like a lightning dragon. Boom! As an explosion resounded, Elder Zong retreated explosively. And at this moment, within the array, Yi Xian punched out. Burial Fist. With a punch, the surrounding lightning bolts instantly turned into ashes. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the Immortal Cloud sect experts changed. Clearly, they had underestimated Yi Xian's strength. Yi Xian slowly walked towards Elder Zong and the others. He didn't say any nonsense and tapped his right foot lightly. In the surroundings, boundless power of the earth surged towards him like a tide. Elder Zong and the others' expressions became extremely grave. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly charged forward and punched out. Burial Fist. A powerful force surged out from Yi Xian's fist, and Elder Zong's expression changed when he noticed how powerful this force was. Attack together. As soon as he finished speaking, all 11 of them attacked in unison. Rumble. The space in the surroundings cracked apart, and Yi Xian retreated by almost 300 m. Even though his burial fist combined with the energy of the earth was extremely formidable, it wasn't enough to resist 11 emperors at the same time. Elder Zong gazed coldly at Yi Xian. "I underestimated you. But so what? Today, you..." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. A sword howl flashed. Elder Zong's expression changed drastically, and he swiftly swept his arms forward. A ray of sword light slashed over. Bang! Everyone watched as Elder Zong's arms were slashed into pieces, and his body was destroyed along with them. Elder Zong gazed at Yi Xian with astonishment. "You?" Yi Xian smiled, "I'm a swordsman." As soon as he finished speaking, the sword in his hand was replaced by the soul-suppressing sword, and then he pointed it at Elder Zong from afar. Bang! Elder Zong's soul was instantly absorbed by Yi Xian. The remaining few Emperor Realm experts from the Immortal Cloud sect had a drastic change in expression as they wanted to retreat. But at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly waved his right hand and 9 swords suddenly appeared above their heads. At the next moment, countless sword lights drowned the 10 of them. Rays of light swept out. Ultimate sword formation. Hiss. 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 The sound of numerous rays of light slicing resounded incessantly, and then 2 emperors were instantly annihilated by the rays of light. Right when Yi Xian was about to continue, a powerful aura suddenly appeared. In the next moment, an old man appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. The old man waved his right hand, and a powerful force blasted the flying swords away. It was the sect master of Immortal Cloud sect. The sect master glanced at the corpses of the 2 emperors, and then he looked at Yi Xian. "This matter is over. All of you can leave." Over? Yi Xian grinned. His smile was a little creepy. You can fight whenever you want and stop whenever you don't want? Who do you think I am? This matter isn't over if you don't compensate me with 1,000,000,000 divine crystals. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful sword intent swept out from his body. Chapter 654. 1,000,000,000 Divine Crystals. The sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect looked coldly at Yi Xian. Letting you leave doesn't mean that my Immortal Cloud sect is afraid of you. Understand? Yi Xian looked at the sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect. Are you going to give it to me or not? The sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect had an emotionless expression. No. What can you do? Yi Xian grinned. He was just about to attack when Shao-Chi suddenly vanished. A sword howl resounded abruptly. The sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect's expression changed when he saw Shao-Chi suddenly attack. He charged forward swiftly, and a powerful force swept out. Meanwhile, Shao-Chi's sword arrived. Bang! The sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect instantly retreated by 3 kilometers. At the same time, one of his arms had vanished. Everyone in the surroundings was completely stunned when they witnessed this scene. The sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect had disbelief on his face as well. You extraordinary sword god. Shao-Chi looked at the sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect. 2,000,000,000 divine crystals, not a single one less. 2,000,000,000. Yi Xian was speechless. The sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect's expression was extremely unsightly as he stared fixedly at Shao-Chi. You're asking for too much. 2,000,000,000? Even the entire Immortal Cloud sect didn't have that many divine crystals. As soon as the sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect finished speaking, Shao-Chi suddenly vanished once more. Hiss! A strand of sword light flashed. The sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect's expression changed drastically. He didn't dare to receive that attack at all. However, it was too swift, and he couldn't dodge it at all. He had no choice but to receive it. And this time, another arm was gone. Shao-Chi looked at the sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect. 3,000,000,000 divine crystals, not a single one less. The sect master of the Immortal Cloud sect spoke ferociously. You're going too far. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and looked to the right. Ancestor summon. Ancestor summon. As soon as he finished speaking, a white light shot into the sky from the back of the Immortal Cloud sect's hall. A figure silently condensed within the white light. In next to no time, a white-haired old man appeared within the white light. The white-haired elder scanned the surroundings, and his gaze finally fell on Yi Xian and Shao-Chi, who were not far away. Looking at Seven and Yi Xian, the white-haired old man frowned. He was about to say something when Seven suddenly said, 4,000,000,000 god crystals, not a single one less. Yi Xian was speechless. Not far away, the faces of the Immortal Cloud sect master and the others were livid. In the air, the white-haired old man looked at Seven. After a long while, he said softly, genius. As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and a strong pressure pressed down on Shao-Chi. Shao-Chi was expressionless. She opened her palm and the sword at her waist suddenly landed in her hand. In the next moment, she slashed forward. Chi! A wisp of sword chi pierced through the air. Sword chi tore through the sky, instantly shattering the white-haired old man's powerful pressure. The white-haired old man punched forward. This fist forced Seven's sword energy to stop. But in the next moment, Seven appeared in front of the white-haired old man. Shao-Chi drew his sword and slashed. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, Seven had unknowingly appeared behind the white-haired old man. Everyone looked at the white-haired old man and the latter said softly, to think that there would be such a monstrous person in this world. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished completely. Seeing this scene, the faces of all the Immortal Cloud sect experts below instantly turned pale. In the air, Seven looked at the sect master of Immortal Cloud sect. 4,000,000,000 or the annihilation of Immortal Cloud sect. Choose. The sect master of Immortal Cloud sect had an extremely ugly expression. 4,000,000,000. It could be said that the entire Immortal Cloud sect did not have that many god crystals. At this moment, Seven's palms suddenly opened. In the next moment, a sword suddenly flew out. 100 feet away, the head of an Immortal Cloud sect emperor expert flew out. He could not retaliate at all. Seeing this scene, the sect master of Immortal Cloud sect's expression changed drastically. At this moment, Seven looked at the sect master of Immortal Cloud sect. Seeing this scene, the latter's expression changed drastically. Give, we will give. Seven nodded slightly, I will give you an hour. After saying that, she retreated to Yi Xian's side. The sect master of Immortal Cloud sect hurriedly turned and left. Yi Xian said with a smile, do you think he will run? Seven said indifferently, unless he wants to completely give up on Immortal Cloud sect. As she said that, she looked at Yi Xian, it seems like a lot of people want that treasure of yours. Yi Xian nodded, there are a lot of them. Seven said softly, you might have a lot of troubles in the future, but it's fine. Yi Xian was a little curious, why is it fine? Seven said, because you have too many troubles. What does it matter if there are a little more? Yi Xian, at this moment, the sect master of Immortal Cloud sect appeared in front of Seven and Yi Xian. The sect master of Immortal Cloud sect hesitated for a moment before tapping with his finger. 10 storage rings landed in front of Seven and Yi Xian, this is all the wealth of my Immortal Cloud sect. Yi Xian took a look. There were 7 billion god crystals in the storage rings. Among them, there were 9 Dao realm treasures, 9 bottles of various elixirs, and some natural treasures. 7 billion. 9 Dao realm treasures. Yi Xian thought about it and took out 5 storage rings for Seven. However, Seven shook her head, I like these worldly possessions more. You keep them. Worldly possessions. Yi Xian was speechless. Seeing that Seven insisted, he didn't say anything else and kept the storage rings. One had to say that it was really good to have a rich friend. After Yi Xian kept the storage rings, he turned around and left with Seven. The two of them didn't really want Immortal Cloud sect to take out 4 billion god crystals as they definitely didn't have that much. Seeing the two of them leave, the sect master of Immortal Cloud sect's expression instantly turned sinister, Yi Xian. As he spoke, he turned to look at an old man, inform the people from Xianhuang Great World. Just say, right at this moment, a man suddenly appeared behind the sect master of Immortal Cloud sect. In the next instant, a sword pierced into the back of the sect master's neck. Fresh blood splattered. This man was Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned, I knew that you definitely wouldn't be willing. As he spoke, he held his sword horizontally. Chi. The sect master of Immortal Cloud sect's head instantly flew out. Yi Xian kept his sword and turned around, disappearing not far away. On the spot, the group of Immortal Cloud sect experts were dumbfounded. In the distant starry sky, on the Imperial starship, Seven said softly, you knew that he wouldn't be willing? Yi Xian nodded, how could he be willing? We took away all the treasures of Immortal Cloud sect. Seven looked at Yi Xian, were we cruel? Yi Xian shook his head, if we were weak, our outcome would be worse. Seven nodded. She raised her head and looked into the distance, saying softly, in the eyes of those people from Xianhuang Great World, we are also weaklings. Yi Xian smiled and was about to speak. At this moment, the starry sky in the distance was suddenly torn apart. Immediately after, a figure flew out from within. It was a woman in black. After the woman in black came out, her gaze landed on Yi Xian and Seven. At this moment, an old man appeared behind her. The old man looked at the woman in black coldly, continue running. The woman in black walked in front of Yi Xian and Seven. Her gaze landed on Seven, save me. Seven was expressionless, reason. The woman in black hesitated for a moment before opening her right hand. In her right hand, there was a black dragon roar, this is my Han country's imperial jade seal. There are my Han country's treasures within. Seven shook her head, I'm not interested in money. Yi Xian, the woman in black was stunned. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "Why don't you take a look first?" 7 shook her head. At this moment, the old man not far away suddenly sneered, "Does she dare to interfere in the matters of my Xianhuang Great World?" Xianhuang Great World. Yi Xian and 7 were stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly took the imperial jade seal from the woman in black's hands. "Lady, don't worry. In broad daylight, I will definitely not allow anyone to kill in front of me." As he said this, he looked at the old man. "Good and evil will always be repaid. Tendo reincarnate. If you don't believe, look up and see who will the heavens spare. Old man, I advise you to be kind." The old man looked at Yi Xian coldly. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Wang! A sword's hum resounded. The old man's pupils constricted as he punched forward. Rumble! A powerful fist force forced Yi Xian's sword to stop. But in the next moment, Yi Xian punched directly at his face. Burial fist. Bang! In an instant, the old man retreated explosively for thousands of meters. As soon as he stopped, Yi Xian appeared in front of him again and slashed down with his sword. The old man roared furiously as he suddenly folded his hands in front of him. Rumble! The surrounding space suddenly trembled. Yi Xian returned to his original position while the old man retreated explosively for thousands of meters. Moreover, a trace of blood flowed slowly from the corner of his mouth. The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment, 2 flying swords suddenly appeared in front of him. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly as he blasted his fist forward. Rumble! The sword radiance was shattered. However, Yi Xian showed up over his head without any sign the next second. Then a sword was swung straight down. The old man's expression changed drastically when he saw this attack, and he flashed backward and avoided it. However, he'd only just stopped when a few more flying swords appeared in front of him again. In the next moment, countless rays of light instantly enveloped him. Hiss! 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 The sound of numerous rays of light slicing resounded incessantly. Suddenly, the old man's furious shout resounded from within the rays of light, and then a powerful aura swept out and instantly shattered Yi Xian's rays of light. Moreover, Yi Xian had suddenly vanished. Hiss! Not too far away, a sword stabbed into the center of the old man's forehead. The surroundings fell silent. The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. "How audacious of you! How dare you interfere in my sky-earth world?" Meanwhile, Yi Xian raised his hand and swung his sword. Hiss! The old man's head flew into the air. Yi Xian's face remained emotionless as he took the old man's spatial ring, and then he turned around to gaze at the black-clothed young woman. The black-clothed young woman spoke solemnly. "Is there enmity between all of you and the members of Sky-Earth World?" Yi Xian nodded. The black-clothed young woman spoke solemnly. "They're plundering our Dark Heaven continent right now." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "The Dark Heaven continent?" The black-clothed young woman gazed at Yi Xian. "The treasures they possess are beyond your imagination." Yi Xian spoke with a serious expression on his face. "Do you have some sort of misunderstanding towards me? I'm really not a greedy person." The black-clothed young woman was at a loss for words. "P.S. Actually, I'm not a greedy person. I just like the feeling of receiving monthly passes from all of you. I don't really like such vulgar things. As someone who writes books, all I want to do is write them well. I've never cared about monthly passes or rewards. Really. I feel that monthly passes and money are vulgar. All of you know that I'm not a vulgar person." Chapter 655. The black-robed lady looked at Yi Xian. "I'm telling the truth. They're currently plundering our mysterious heaven continent without the slightest scruple. Before coming to our mysterious heaven continent, they've already plundered several universes." Yi Xian asked, "They are plundering without restraint?" She nodded. "Northern Army. This is an army from Xuanhuan Great World. This army often plunder resources from small worlds and universes. Everywhere they go, there is nothing left. Yi Xian frowned. So arrogant? Arrogant? The black-clothed woman sneered, and this is just an outer legion. You don't know their main legion. Their main legion is the real arrogant ones. Wherever they go, those who obey them will prosper and those who oppose them will die. Yi Xian went silent for a moment before looking at Seven. Seven was expressionless. Kill. Yi Xian smiled. Just what I wanted. He then looked at the black-shirt lady. Lead the way. She said solemnly, just the two of you? Yi Xian nodded, just the two of us. She shook her head, if it is just the two of you, you will be sending yourselves to death. Yi Xian smiled, why? She said, they have many people and are strong. Yi Xian said, you don't have to worry about that. Lead the way. The black-clothed woman looked deeply at Yi Xian and Shao Qi before leading the way. On the way, Yi Xian looked at the jade seal in his hand. What is this? The woman in black had a complicated expression on her face. The jade seal of my Han Empire. Yi Xian asked, you said that there are treasures inside? She nodded, yes. Yi Xian asked, how do I open it? She wanted to say something but stopped. Yi Xian smiled, why? You can't bear to part with it now? The black-clothed woman sighed softly, the rest of the treasures in my Han kingdom have basically been looted. Only this jade seal is left, and within this jade seal, there is a supreme divine grade dragon vein. Super divine grade. Not far away, Seven suddenly said, transcendent god grade? The black-clothed woman nodded. Transcendent divine grade. Seven looked at Yi Xian, this thing is okay. My god country only has one. Yi Xian flicked his finger, and the jade seal flew in front of Shao Qi, for you. Seven shook her head, no. Yi Xian asked, why? Seven said, keep it. You don't even have one. When he heard this, Yi Xian's heart felt warm. He smiled and was about to say something when Seven said, if I say no, then no. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Shao Linger appeared in front of Yi Xian. The sixth floor said that they can give this to me. If I put it in the pagoda, there will be a lot of spiritual qi in the pagoda. My spirit tree can absorb it, and so can Shao Ta. Yi Xian asked, Senior, is that so? He didn't really trust this little Linger. He didn't know where this girl learned to lie from. Sometimes, she would lie. The sixth floor said, yes. Your pagoda needs spiritual qi too. A dragon vein of this level is good for the pagoda. Yi Xian nodded and passed the seal to Shao Linger. Shao Linger grinned and hugged the seal before returning to the prison pagoda. In just a moment, a white dragon appeared on the second floor. Transcendent divine grade dragon vein. Along with the appearance of this dragon vein, the spiritual qi in the prison pagoda became denser. He could sense that Shao Ta was getting excited. Of course, the most excited one was Shao Linger. Because the dragon vein would be of great help to the spirit trees she planted. Outside the prison pagoda, the black-clothed woman beside Yi Xian suddenly said, I feel like you don't understand their strength. Yi Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Black-yellow great world. He knew that this world must be extremely powerful because this force had been sucking the blood of other universes. Under such circumstances, the people of black-yellow great world must be getting stronger and stronger. The black-clothed woman said in a low voice, Why do you want to go against the people of black-yellow great world? Yi Xian collected his thoughts and smiled, We have some grudges with them. Saying so, he looked into the distance, How long until we arrive? The black-clothed woman said, An hour. Yi Xian said softly, How many people are there in the army from black-yellow great world? The black-clothed woman said, Only 100. 100. Yi Xian looked at the black-clothed woman and was stunned, 100 can destroy your black-blue great world? The black-clothed woman's face was ugly, the strength of these 100 people is beyond your imagination. Yi Xian said in a low voice, all of them are in the Emperor realm? The black-clothed woman shook her head, there are only about 30 Emperor realm, but they are extremely powerful. Moreover, they are wearing the best equipment. Not only that, each of them has a Tendo realm celestial wolf demon beast. Saying so, she looked at Yi Xian, you will know how terrifying they are when you meet them later. Yi Xian nodded, let's hope so. The black-clothed woman glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. About 4 hours later, the black-clothed woman suddenly said, it's in front. Yi Xian and Shaoqi looked up and saw a planet not far away. At this moment, this planet was emitting an extremely pungent smell of blood. Yi Xian frowned, they won't massacre the people of your continent, right? The black-clothed woman was expressionless, that's what they did. Hearing this, Shaoqi frowned, even ordinary people? The black-clothed woman nodded, what they mean is to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Eliminate the weeds and eliminate the roots. Shaoqi shook her head, inhumane. Although God Nation had waged war, they hadn't slaughtered the weak. The actions of the black-yellow great world were inhumane. They were purely plundering. At this moment, Shaoqi suddenly said, kill them all. Yi Xian looked at Shaoqi. Needless to say, this little girl was angry. In next to no time, the three of them entered the Xian-Sang continent. As soon as they entered, Yi Xian and Shaoqi frowned. The smell of blood. The smell of blood in this universe was too strong. Needless to say, many people had definitely died. At this moment, the black-clothed woman said, let's go to Han. Han is the most prosperous place in our Xian-Sang continent. They must be there. Yi Xian nodded, lead the way. The black-clothed woman's figure trembled and flashed towards the distance. In next to no time, the three of them arrived at the imperial capital of Han. Before they even entered the city, a monstrous smell of blood assaulted their faces. Yi Xian looked towards the city. From the sky, the city was covered in corpses. It was really a field of corpses and rivers of blood. This was a massacre. At this moment, an armored man appeared in front of Yi Xian and the other two. When he saw the black-clothed woman beside Yi Xian, the armored man grinned, this woman is so beautiful, huh? As soon as he finished speaking, he charged towards the black-clothed woman. The black-clothed woman looked coldly at the armored man and did not dodge. And just when the armored man was a few feet away from the black-clothed woman, his head suddenly flew off. Blood spurted out like a fountain. The man's eyes were wide open, and there was disbelief in his eyes. The black-clothed woman turned to look at Yi Xian, her eyes filled with shock. Yi Xian and Shaoqi walked towards the city. Along the way, there were corpses everywhere, and many of them were children. Cruel. Yi Xian's face was as gloomy as still water. He had also killed people, but he had never laid his hands on children, women, and children. Killing the weak would only make one look incompetent. And he did not expect that some people could be so cruel. And once these people entered the chaotic universe, it was hard to imagine what would happen to the chaotic universe. At this moment, a middle-aged man holding a spear suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and the other two. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and the other two, you are. Just as the middle-aged man said this, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Wang. The sound of a sword suddenly shook the sky. Boom. Before the middle-aged man could react, he was sent flying. And the moment he was sent flying, a sword flashed past his throat. Chi. The middle-aged man's head flew off. Impudent. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly came from the sky. Then, a powerful aura swept over from the sky. And at this moment, Shaoqi suddenly disappeared. Wang. The sound of a sword soared into the sky. In an instant, Shaoqi returned to her original position. But this time, there was a bloody head at her feet. Seeing this scene, the black-clothed girl nearby was completely stunned. This Yi Xian and Shaoqi's strength had far exceeded her expectations. Rumble, rumble, rumble. At this moment, the ground not far away suddenly trembled. Soon, a powerful pressure came from the distant streets. Yi Xian looked into the distance. There, 100 cavalrymen riding Sky Wolf were charging towards them. One had to admit that the aura of these 100 people was very powerful. It could be said that they were not any weaker than Shao Qi's guards. Yi Xian took a step forward and rotated his right foot. In an instant, the power of the earth gathered around him. Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand, and a powerful aura suddenly gathered around him. At this moment, the cavalrymen were only 10 feet away from him. The powerful aura was suffocating. All of a sudden, Yi Xian took a step forward and threw a punch. Burial fist. Rumble. With this punch, a monstrous aura swept out from Yi Xian's fist. In an instant, the entire Han city shook violently as if there was a huge earthquake. And in front of Yi Xian's group, the 100 cavalrymen were forced to a stop by the power and aura of this punch. At this moment, Yi Xian's group was in a mess. If it wasn't for the aura of the 100 cavalrymen, Yi Xian's punch could have destroyed the entire Han city. Burial fist. There was no doubt about its power. In front of Yi Xian, a middle-aged man riding a sky wolf walked out. The sky wolf under him glared angrily at Yi Xian, and its eyes were blood red as if it wanted to devour Yi Xian. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian and was about to speak. But not far away, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Don't say anything. Either you kill me, or I kill all of you." As soon as he finished speaking, he lightly stomped his right foot and shot out like a sword. Chapter 656. Kill. The moment Yi Xian charged out, a wave of sword light enveloped the group of people. The northern army didn't back down in the slightest. Kill. The general in the lead bellowed, and 100 people charged out in unison. Seven raised her head and looked into the sky. In the next moment, she charged up into the sky. The girl in black glanced at Yi Xian in the distance, then turned and left. In the distance, Yi Xian charged straight into the group of 100 people. Among them, there were 7 great emperors, while the rest were at least at the mastery realm. One had to admit that these 100 people were very strong. With their combined strength, they were able to suppress Yi Xian. If it was a one-on-one fight, Yi Xian could kill anyone in a second. But when they teamed up, there was nothing he could do. Boom! At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly retreated several hundred meters. As soon as he stopped, several spears pierced through the air toward him. Yi Xian slashed forward with the executing heaven sword. TCH. The spears were shattered in an instant. At the same time, he took a step forward and punched out. Fist of burial. Rumble. In an instant, the dozen or so soldiers charging at him were pulverized into mincemeat. But the next moment, a spear stabbed into his forehead. Bang! Yi Xian retreated dozens of meters. The spear hadn't broken through his defenses. His physical body was at the level of a great emperor. Yi Xian stomped his right foot and turned into a wave of sword light that shot forward. TCH. Nearby, several soldiers' heads flew into the air. But soon, Yi Xian was forced back again. But in the blink of an eye, he was once again charging at the group of soldiers. The number of northern region soldiers on the battlefield was dwindling, and Yi Xian was killing a soldier with every passing moment. Kill. There was only one thought in Yi Xian's mind, and that was to kill. He had no good feelings toward the people from Black Origin Great World at all. When the people from Black Origin Great World came looking for him, it was already destined that they would oppose each other. Either you die or I live. The more Yi Xian killed, the fewer Northern Army soldiers there were. Now, there were less than 50 of them left. Yi Xian had already killed half of them. As for Yi Xian, not only was his physique at the Emperor realm, but he was also wearing a Dao realm defensive treasure. Although he was injured, it wasn't fatal. Bang! Right at this moment, Yi Xian was suddenly pushed back by the joint forces of over a dozen people. After Yi Xian was pushed back, the leader of the Northern Army suddenly shouted, "Retreat! Retreat!" They no longer wanted to continue fighting with Yi Xian, because they had already lost too many people, and this Yi Xian, not only did he not weaken, he instead became stronger. Therefore, he decisively chose to retreat. The remaining dozens of Northern Army soldiers turned around and left. However, Yi Xian had no intention of giving up. With a shake of his body, he charged toward the Northern Army. The leader of the Northern Army's expression changed when he saw this. Hurry to the teleportation formation. With that, everyone sped up and rushed out of the city. Behind them, people were dying at every moment. Yi Xian was fast, but his sword was even faster. A flying sword followed closely behind the Northern Army like a maggot on a tarsal bone. Before long, the Northern Army arrived at a teleportation formation. As soon as they jumped onto it, a blue light enveloped them. At this moment, a tiny, empty character suddenly appeared between Yi Xian's brows. Space Dao Law. In the next moment, the space around the Northern Army was changed by Yi Xian. This change made the teleportation formation lose its effectiveness. Sensing this, the Northern Army's expressions turned extremely ugly. The leader of the Northern Army glared at Yi Xian, who was walking toward them from afar. Do you know who we are? We are the subordinates of the Northern King of the Xuanhuan Great World. Yi Xian suddenly grinned. Do you know who I am? The leader stared at Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian smiled. My name is Yi Xian, and I specialize in killing people from your Xuanhuan Great World. With that, he suddenly disappeared. Hum. The cry of a sword abruptly resounded in the battlefield. Nearby, the leader's expression turned ferocious. Kill. A group of people dashed towards Yi Xian as soon as they finished speaking. An hour later, Yi Xian lay on the ground, and corpses were everywhere around him. Not a single one of the 100 Northern Army soldiers had survived. All of them had been cleanly slaughtered by him. On the ground, Yi Xian quietly looked at the sky. A faint red glow was emitting from his body. It wasn't the power of his bloodline. It was the demonic nature in his body. Ever since he had turned into a demon, his demonic nature had grown stronger and stronger. And he himself had also discovered this point. However, he didn't think it was a bad thing. Demonic nature was also human nature. He didn't regret slaughtering the Northern Army at all. Or rather, it felt great. Too great. Just at this moment, a sword cry came from the horizon. In the next moment, Shaoqi appeared beside him. Shaoqi glanced at Yi Xian. Are you okay? Yi Xian nodded. 7 said, just now, there was someone who exceeded Emperor Realm and I killed him. But he seems to be calling for help. Calling for help. Yi Xian grinned. That's good. Shaoqi nodded. I have an idea. Yi Xian said, speak. Shaoqi said softly, it's a waste of time to find them like this. Why don't we let them find us? Yi Xian said with a smile, great. Shaoqi nodded. Then, she opened her palm. There was a storage ring in her palm. A black storage ring. Shaoqi passed it to Yi Xian. For you. Yi Xian said seriously, I am not a greedy person. Shaoqi looked at Yi Xian. I know. Yi Xian asked. Really? Shaoqi nodded. You are poor, too poor. I understand you. Yi Xian, a moment later, Yi Xian started to clear his spoils of war. Over 100 storage rings. Looking at the 100-odd storage rings in front of him, Yi Xian grinned from ear to ear. Finally, he counted them. Along with the ones in front of him, he had a total of 7 billion god crystals, 52 Dao realm treasures, and some miscellaneous items. Of course, there was also the transcendent grade god meridian in the tower. Close to 5 billion god crystals. Yi Xian exclaimed. He had never seen so much money in his life. He didn't earn this money, he got it from killing people. He, Yi Xian, killed people based on who they were, but these people from Xianhuang Great World didn't. To them, the world outside of Xianhuang Great World was a target for them to plunder. One could imagine how rich the people in that world were. Right at that moment, the black-robed girl appeared in front of Yi Xian and Shao Qi. Behind her was a boy who was around 6 or 7 years old. His face was a little pale, but there was no fear in his eyes. The black-robed girl looked at the corpses all over the place and then at Yi Xian and Shao Qi. "Thank you." Shao Qi looked at the black-robed girl. "How many people are left here?" The black-robed girl said solemnly, "A few." Shao Qi said, "Bring them to the chaotic universe. There will be people there to settle you." Chaotic universe? The black-robed girl was stunned. "You are from the chaotic universe?" Shao Qi nodded. "Have you heard of it?" The black-robed girl said solemnly, "Yes, I heard that a fifth-dimensional treasure appeared there." Yi Xian, the black-robed girl said, "The people from Xianhuang Great World won't let the chaotic universe off." Shao Qi looked at her. "I am still alive. Who dares to bully my people?" The black-robed girl looked at Shao Qi. "Can all of us go to the chaotic universe?" Shao Qi nodded. "Yes. But you must have your own value. Do you understand?" The black-robed girl said solemnly, "We have many factions and sects here. They are all hidden. If we go to your side," Shao Qi said, "bring your martial path civilization there. When you go there, people will find you and communicate with you. Of course, when you go there, you will be people of my God country and have to follow the rules there. Do you understand?" The black-robed girl nodded. "Understood." Shao Qi pointed and a white light entered her brow. "This is the route. Go." The black-robed girl nodded and then pulled the boy away. At that moment, the boy looked at Yi Xian. "Did you just kill all of them?" Yi Xian nodded. The boy looked at Yi Xian. "How can I become as outstanding as you?" When he heard this, Yi Xian was delighted. This fellow really knew how to speak. Yi Xian got up and walked up to the little boy. He opened his palm, and a Dao-level sword appeared in his hand. He handed the sword to the little boy. "Work hard to become stronger and protect the people around you. Do you understand?" The boy took the sword and looked at Yi Xian. "I will work hard." After saying this, he turned around and left with the black-robed girl. Very quickly, the people of this continent started to move towards the chaotic universe. Shao Qi looked into the sky and said softly, "Their people should be here soon." Yi Xian stood beside Shao Qi. "The enemy will get stronger and stronger." Shao Qi was expressionless. "One day, I will stab my sword into Xianhuang Great World." Yi Xian looked at Shao Qi. Shao Qi said, "I hate Xianhuang Great World, so they should disappear." Yi Xian was speechless. At that moment, Shao Qi looked at Yi Xian. "Xianhuang Great World has done so much evil. Am I doing this to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens?" Yi Xian thought about it and said, "You can say that." Shao Qi nodded. "Actually, I am a good person." Yi Xian's expression became weird. This Shao Qi, at that moment, the demon lord's voice suddenly resounded. "It's over. This girl has been with you for so long, and her personality has started to change." At this moment, the space in front of the two suddenly split open, and a middle-aged man walked out. The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian and Shao Qi, and in the next moment, he looked at the corpses at their feet. After a moment of silence, he said, "Sorry to disturb you. I was just passing by." With that, he turned around and returned to the spatial crack. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 657. The middle-aged man had vanished. Yi Xian and Shao Qi looked at each other. The middle-aged man's actions left them a little dumbfounded. "He's leaving just like that?" Shao Qi suddenly said, "Wait." Yi Xian nodded. It didn't take long for the space before them to be torn apart again, and then the middle-aged man had appeared once more. This time, there were 2 more people behind him. They were experts at the God rank realm. The God rank realm was above the Emperor realm. Yi Xian gazed at the middle-aged man and smiled. Weren't you just passing by? The middle-aged man gazed coldly at Yi Xian and Shao Qi. Who exactly are you? Yi Xian didn't answer him. He gazed at Shao Qi instead. How many do you want to fight? Shao Qi thought for a moment and said, all of them. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly vanished. Hiss. A ray of light tore through the air. The middle-aged man's expression changed, an extraordinary sword god. As soon as he finished speaking, Shao Qi's sword arrived before him. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man and the other 2 attacked in unison. Hiss. 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 The middle-aged man and the other 2 were instantly enveloped by an expanse of light. 3 breaths of time later, Shao Qi returned to Yi Xian's side, and only the middle-aged man remained not too far away from her. As for the other 2 divine crystal realm experts, they'd fallen to the ground. The middle-aged man's face was extremely pale. Besides deep fear and terror, there was also terror in his eyes as he gazed at Shao Qi. Who exactly are you? Shao Qi gazed at the middle-aged man. Go back and get everyone else. The middle-aged man spoke fiercely. Are you provoking my Sky-Earth world? Shao Qi nodded. I. When she spoke up to this point, she glanced at Yi Xian and said, the 2 of us will fight all of you. Go back and get everyone else. Yi Xian was speechless. The middle-aged man laughed fiercely, and then he turned around and left without saying anything. Yi Xian collected the corpses of the 2 divine crystal powerhouses and handed them over to the demon lord. These 2 divine crystal powerhouses had a total of 500 million divine crystals and 10 Tao realm treasures. Needless to say, the experts of Sky-Earth world were truly too wealthy. 7 suddenly said, God realm is too weak. Yi Xian looked at 7 and she said softly, why are you so weak? Meanwhile, the Fiend Lord's voice suddenly resounded. Little girl, only now do you realize that there's always someone better out there. You're a monster, but there's someone even more monstrous than you. Even in the Xianhuang Great World, the reason why things are going so smoothly for you too is because that group of people doesn't fully understand you too. If they knew about your talents and combat strength, they wouldn't have sent these people. 7 nodded. I know. As she spoke, she looked at the spatial crack in the distance. They should have looked at us. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, I think we should keep a low profile. 7 said, but strength doesn't allow it. Yi Xian was speechless. The demon lord said softly, you 2 little fellows. Right at this moment, the spatial rift in front of them suddenly trembled, and it wasn't long before an old man in a linen robe walked out from within it. The old man's body was ethereal. Obviously, it wasn't his true body. After the old man appeared, his gaze descended onto 7, and his eyes suddenly flickered with golden light. A short while later, his expression gradually became solemn. Innate Sword Tao spiritual body, peak extraordinary sword god, peak imperial realm. When he spoke up to this point, he took a step forward while the golden light in his eyes turned violet. A short while later, his expression became extremely solemn. Tao spiritual root. Innate spiritual intelligence. As he spoke, his face had turned pale. Meanwhile, the old man took another step forward while the violet light in his eyes turned black and white. A long time passed before his hand started to tremble. The fate of a human king. Karmic luck of the Grand Tao. How? How could this be possible? This is impossible. It's completely impossible. As he spoke, he took a few dozen steps back. A human king. What was a human king? At the beginning of the 4th dimension, the universe was in chaos. At that time, humans had just appeared and were weak. In the end, a human king appeared. That was the first human king in human history, she. This human king she led the human race to fight against the Tendo, the demon race, and the myriad of races in the universe. He also founded the human race's civilization, martial arts civilization, and established various human systems. It could be said that the human race's civilization began with this human king Shi. After that, a few more human kings appeared in the human race. These human kings were all geniuses, and they brought the human race to an even higher peak. In that era, the human king was higher than the Tendo, and even higher than the legendary heavenly gods. The last human king of the human race was called Zhou. This human king failed to fight against the Tendo and heavenly gods. After that, the human race no longer had a human king, only the Son of Heaven. The Son of Heaven. The Son of Heaven. After Zhou, the human race was ruled by the Tendo and some ancient heavenly gods. It was also after that that the Tendo was supreme, and the divine power was supreme. The reason why the old man was shocked was because he saw the fate of a human king on 7. What did this mean? It meant that this little girl could very well become a human king. Once this little girl became a human king, it must be known that although the human kings had already disappeared, these human kings still had countless followers behind them. Even the fourth dimension's Tendo and those ancient heavenly gods did not dare to look down on them. If those people knew that a new human king had appeared in this world, the old man could not imagine what would happen. Nowadays, many people only knew about the Son of Heaven and emperors. No one knew about the human king, but some of the ancient monsters knew about it. The old man stared at 7. After a moment, he turned around and was about to leave. At this time, Yi Xian, who was not far away, suddenly said, "Don't you want to look at me?" The old man turned around and looked at Yi Xian. His eyes emitted a purple light. After a moment, he shook his head, wasting old man's Xian qi. After saying that, he turned around and entered the spatial crack. In his original position, Yi Xian flew into a rage. "What did you say? Don't you motherf asterisk cur leave." After saying that, he raised his sword and rushed over. But when he rushed to the spatial crack, it suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian was infuriated and slashed down with his sword. Qi! That space was directly shattered by him. At this time, 7 looked at Yi Xian. "Don't care about what others think." Yi Xian shrugged. "Actually, I'm not angry." At this time, the demon lord's voice sounded. "From your appearance, your talent is indeed not top-notch, but," Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "But what?" The demon lord said, "But most of the time, talent is not the only standard to measure a person. Since ancient times, many outstanding people did not necessarily have good talent. The path of Tao Yi relies more on one's own efforts and opportunities. Of course, your talent is not bad, he just can't see through you." Hearing this, Yi Xian laughed. Senior's vision is unique, not something those ordinary people can compare to. The demon lord, at this time, 7 suddenly said, "Looks like they won't be coming for a while. Let's go to their spatial stronghold to find them." Yi Xian nodded. "Okay." With that said, the two turned into a sword light and soared into the sky. After entering the starry sky, the two disappeared into the distant end of the galaxy on the Imperial starship. Target, the next spatial stronghold. On the Imperial starship, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. Absorb. Among the spoils of war, there were 6 Tao realm swords, and now he wanted to take this opportunity to break through to the origin realm. When he recultivated in adversity, he stopped at this realm. And now, what he needed to do was to improve his realm. After a sword was inserted into his abdomen, a pure spiritual energy exploded from his body. Tao realm swords. How terrifying was the energy of this sword. Yi Xian began to absorb this energy madly, and gradually, a wave of aura spread out from his body. Not far away, 7 glanced at Yi Xian, then turned to look at the distant end of the starry sky. 3 days later. Yi Xian, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes, and a wave of aura suddenly floated out from his mouth. Origin realm. At this moment, not far away, 7 suddenly said, "Look." Hearing this, Yi Xian looked up, and in the distant end of the starry sky, there was a long bridge. The bridge stretched across the starry sky, and the left and right sides could not see the end, and the bridge was empty, with gusts of cold wind blowing. It was quite strange. Yi Xian said softly, "What is this?" 7 shook her head. "Let's go take a look." Yi Xian nodded, and soon, the two arrived in front of the bridge. As soon as they arrived, a wave of cold wind blew over. Yi Xian frowned slightly. "What is this?" 7 jumped onto the bridge, and as soon as she arrived, she frowned. At this moment, the demon lord's voice rang out in Yi Xian's mind, "This place is not normal, be careful." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression became serious. He looked around, and just as he was about to speak, a woman in red suddenly appeared in front of him and 7. The woman in red had a ferocious face, and she was a ghost body. 7 said softly, "Ghost." Yi Xian looked at the woman in red, and the latter was looking at him and 7 viciously. Yi Xian said solemnly, "She is not simple." 7 looked around with an indifferent expression. However, her left hand was holding onto the sword by her waist. Just at this moment, another soul appeared behind them. Yi Xian turned around and his expression changed. That was because in front of him was a dense mass of souls. At this moment, the entire bridge was filled with souls. These souls were all extremely ferocious, and they didn't look like normal souls. At this moment, 7 suddenly said, "They are nurturing evil souls." Yi Xian looked at 7, and she said softly, "There are some evil cultivation techniques recorded in the history books, and this evil soul nurturing is one of them. This bridge should be a god realm treasure, and someone is using it to nurture evil souls." After saying this, she looked around. "Let's go." Yi Xian nodded his head. The two of them were about to leave when a voice rang out from the bridge, "You want to leave? Isn't it too late?" The moment the voice landed, numerous evil souls charged towards Yi Xian and 7. 7 frowned and was about to attack. At this moment, Yi Xian stopped her. "Let me perform." 7 was speechless. "P.S. Did you misunderstand what I said yesterday? I like the feeling of you giving me monthly tickets. I didn't tell you not to send me. You can't twist my words." Chapter 658. Souls. It could be said that the thing that Yi Xian feared the least was souls. Regardless of whether it was the soul-suppressing sword or his soul-setting sword, both of them were absolutely effective against soul-type creatures. Looking at the incoming souls, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the soul-suppressing sword appeared in his hand. In the next instant, the soul-suppressing sword flew out. Wang! A sword hum rang out from the bridge. The moment the soul-suppressing sword appeared, the souls on the bridge revealed expressions of shock and fear. At the same time, a voice rang out, "Soul-suppressing sword. You actually have the soul-suppressing sword. You." A strong force suddenly dashed towards Yi Xian as soon as he finished speaking. 7 frowned. She raised her hand and slashed to the right. Hong! With a slash of the sword, an afterimage retreated several thousand feet in front of Shao Qi. Shao Qi looked into the distance, and a few hundred meters in front of her, there was a skinny old man. He was hunched over, and he only had one eye. He held a black banner in his hand. The old man stared at Shao Qi, transcendent sword god. Shao Qi sized up the old man, "Ugly." Yi Xian was speechless. It had to be said that the old man was truly ugly, especially his face. There were many black warts on it, and he looked extremely disgusting. However, it was a little hurtful for Shao Qi to say it so directly. As expected, the old man's face turned savage. "Little girl, do you know who the person in front of you is?" Shao Qi lowered her head. "I don't want to look at you." Impudent. The old man was enraged, and he suddenly disappeared, and a powerful aura swept towards Shao Qi. Shao Qi raised her hand and slashed out. Hong! The old man was sent back to his original position. The old man looked at Shao Qi, shocked and furious. "You," Shao Qi turned to look at Yi Xian, and she glanced at Yi Xian, "You look more pleasing to the eye." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the soul-suppressing sword in Yi Xian's hand was still frantically devouring the surrounding evil souls. The soul-suppressing sword was very excited. Young lord, these souls are great nourishment. I will definitely be able to advance. Advancement. The divine realm? Yi Xian said softly, then absorb more. The soul-suppressing sword said, all right. At this moment, the skinny old man in the distance suddenly retreated a few dozen meters. Then, he clasped his hands together and began to chant something. Gradually, the bridge beneath Yi Xian's feet began to tremble violently. Soon, the evil spirits in the surroundings suddenly became violent. The soul-suppressing sword suddenly said, young lord, these people's souls have all been refined into evil spirits. Yi Xian asked, ferocious spirit? The soul-suppressing sword said, yes, these people's souls will forever be his slaves, unable to be freed. It's very miserable. If I absorb them, I can free them. Yi Xian glanced at those souls. These souls did not have any intelligence. They should have been erased. Yi Xian asked, can you deal with them? The soul-suppressing sword said, young lord, you can't underestimate me. All those years ago in the Nether race, I specialized in suppressing evil spirits. Moreover, I specialized in suppressing peerless experts. These evil spirits are simply a piece of cake to me. Yi Xian smiled, then I'll leave them to you. The soul-suppressing sword trembled violently, and then it transformed into a ray of black light that flashed through the surroundings. In an instant, countless evil spirits were absorbed by it. The skinny old man's expression became extremely unsightly when he witnessed this scene. You. Why do you possess the Nether race's soul-suppressing sword? Yi Xian gazed at the old man, take a guess. The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian, do you know? Who is this old man? Yi Xian shook his head, I don't know. The old man spoke fiercely, the old man is a foreign elder under the command of the king of the northern region. The sky-split world. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he said, you're from sky-split world? The old man spoke coldly, you don't believe me? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I believe you. I'm quite curious about how you know about the Nether race. According to my knowledge, the Nether race is from the Chaos verse. The old man gazed at Yi Xian, you aren't a member of the Nether race. Yi Xian smiled, why would you say that? The old man spoke coldly, the Nether race is from the Chaos verse indeed. However, some of the experts of their race left the Chaos verse all those years ago. For example, the Nether King. He went to Sky-Split World. Sky-Split World. Yi Xian frowned slightly, the Nether King is at Sky-Split World? The old man gazed at Yi Xian, you're from the Chaos verse. Yi Xian nodded. The old man laughed coldly, you probably don't know yet, but my Sky-Split World has already set its sights on your Chaos verse. In less than a month, your Chaos verse will vanish from this world. Yi Xian laughed, if I'm not wrong, you're calling for someone, right? The old man's eyes narrowed slightly. You know what the old man is planning, so why haven't you left? Yi Xian grinned. Why don't you guess? The old man gazed at Yi Xian, and then his expression suddenly changed. You're Yi Xian. Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he said, you recognize me? The old man said in a low voice, you have that fifth-dimensional treasure in your possession. When he spoke up to hear, a wisp of undisguised greed appeared in his eyes. Yi Xian smiled, I do. Do you want it? The old man gazed at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Right at this moment, the space by his side suddenly trembled, and then it didn't take long for the trembling space to be torn apart. After that, a violet-robed old man walked out from within it. The violet-robed old man gazed at the old man, Ku Jin, you actually asked for guidance. The old man glanced at Shao Qi and said, help me keep her busy. The old man glanced at Shao Qi and smiled, what's in it for me? Ku Jin spoke coldly, 500 million divine crystals. The old man chuckled, 1 billion. Ku Jin glanced at the old man. All right. The old man roared with laughter, and then he gazed at Xiao Qi. He sized her up and said, I presume that you're a monstrous genius. Come, let me see how monstrous you are. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. An afterimage flashed across the battlefield. Xiao Qi had an emotionless expression on her face as she suddenly vanished. A sword howl suddenly tore through the sky. In an instant, the violet-robed old man moved 3 kilometers back. At the same time, one of his arms had vanished. After the old man stopped moving, he gazed at Xiao Qi with terror. You. When he spoke up to hear, he suddenly turned around to gaze at Ku Jin, and he roared furiously, You tricked the old man. Ku Jin remained silent. He noticed that this little girl's strength was much stronger than he'd imagined. She was too formidable. Ku Jin glanced at Xiao Qi, and then he turned around and left. He didn't hesitate at all. The old man was both shocked and furious when he saw Ku Jin flee, and he hurriedly turned around and left as well. Xiao Qi was about to chase after him. Meanwhile, her beautiful brows knit together slightly, and she turned around to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, countless souls were surging towards the soul-suppressing sword that stood before Yi Xian. As it absorbed more and more souls, the aura emanated by the soul-suppressing sword had practically multiplied by a few times. Xiao Qi's brows knit together slightly because the bridge beneath her and Yi Xian had suddenly started trembling. Danger! Xiao Qi walked over to Yi Xian's side. Suddenly, the entire bridge exploded apart. Both Yi Xian and Xiao Qi had vanished. Not long after Yi Xian and Xiao Qi vanished, a middle-aged man appeared here, and there were 2 old men behind him. One of the old men was Ku Jin from before. Ku Jin glanced at the surroundings, and his face was filled with bewilderment. They were here just now. The middle-aged man glanced at the surroundings and said, Are you sure that little girl has attained the extraordinary sword god realm? Ku Jin nodded, and his expression gradually became solemn. Absolutely. The middle-aged man spoke softly, This ruler isn't simple at all. Ku Jin gazed at the middle-aged man. General Fang Yi, we must eliminate these 2 people if we want to conquer the chaotic universe. The middle-aged man glanced at Ku Jin. Are you going to kill them? Ku Jin's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly lowered his head. He was one of the 3 peerless generals under the command of the king of the northern region. A peerless general. Every single one of them was an extraordinary expert that guarded an entire region in the universe. Regardless of whether it was in terms of individual strength or ability to lead troops, they were top-rate existences. However, this person before him was in charge of 100,000 troops of the northern region, and his status was extremely respected in the northern territory of the universe. The middle-aged man called Fang Yi raised his head and looked towards the distance, and he spoke softly, That little girl has the fate of a mortal king. He can't be allowed to live. The fate of a mortal king. Ku Jin's expression changed. She has the fate of a mortal king. Fang Yi paid no attention to Ku Jin, and he turned his head slightly to the side. Summon all the expeditionary forces. They must arrive in the starry sky of the chaotic universe within a day. Anyone who doesn't arrive will be killed regardless of the reason. As he spoke, he paused for a moment before he continued, Immediately gather all the information on the divine king of the chaotic universe. It isn't just her, I want all the information on the divine kingdom since the beginning. The old man bowed slightly, and then he left silently. Fang Yi gazed towards the distant starry sky and spoke softly, It's going to be a tough battle. As soon as he finished speaking, he'd vanished. After the bridge suddenly exploded, Yi Xian and Xiao Qi appeared on the surface of a river. It was dark around them, and the water was murky. Not far in front of them stood an old woman. The old woman was boiling soup. The fragrance of the soup was extremely alluring. Yi Xian looked at the old woman. Senior, you are? The old woman scooped a bowl of soup, and then she looked at Yi Xian and Xiao Qi, and she grinned, Have a bowl of soup. Her smile was somewhat terrifying. Yi Xian glanced at the bowl of soup, and he shook his head. No, I won't drink it. The old woman suddenly appeared in front of Shao Qi and Yi Xian, and she looked at them. Drink this soup, and forget about your past life, and forget about this life. How great is that? As she spoke, she passed the soup to Shao Qi. Shao Qi looked at the bowl of soup, and at this moment, a scene suddenly appeared in the soup. In a turbid world, a woman in a plain dress stood quietly on top of the clouds. She looked down at the bottom of the clouds with an expressionless face. Not far away from her right stood another woman. The woman stared at the woman in the plain dress in rage. You're crazy. The woman in the plain dress suddenly placed her sword on the woman's forehead, and her expression was ferocious. Crazy? Have you forgotten how he died? As her voice landed, the sword stabbed in half an inch. The woman's blood flowed out. The woman stared at the woman in the plain dress. This isn't what he wants to see. The woman in the plain dress looked at the woman in the plain dress, and her expression became more and more ferocious. Then let him tell me personally. Other than him, no one can stop me. As her voice landed, she turned around and left. Behind her, the woman stared at the woman in the plain dress. This four-dimensional universe has countless living beings. In the distance, the woman in the plain dress didn't even turn her head. This four-dimensional universe isn't as important as a strand of his hair. Chapter 659. Above the clouds, it suddenly became silent. The woman stood there quietly and didn't speak for a long time. After a long time, the woman lowered her head. No one can stop her. At this moment, a voice rang out, "Don't go. She will kill you." The woman said softly, "He said that if we have the ability, we must protect the weak." That voice was silent. The woman looked below the clouds, her eyes slowly becoming a little dazed. "I also want him to live." On the river, the scene stopped. In front of Seven, the old woman's expression became extremely solemn. That woman in the plain dress. I have never seen such a strong swordsman. As she said that, she looked towards Seven. Drink this soup and end the karma of your past life. Seven asked, "Why should I end it?" The old woman smiled. "Why not end it?" Seven looked at the old woman. "My past life is my past life. I am me. I don't care about my past life and I won't forget my past life. I am Seven, I am me." The old woman looked at Seven and was about to speak. Suddenly, her expression changed. She grabbed Seven's right hand and closed her eyes. After a moment, she opened them. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. You actually have the fate of the human king." Seven frowned. "Human king?" The old woman looked at Seven deeply. Unbelievable, after so many years, someone with the fate of the human king has actually appeared. At the side, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "What is human king?" The old woman looked at Yi Xian. "It is the king of the human race, on par with Tendo, on par with the ancient gods." Yi Xian asked, "Emperor?" The old woman suddenly raged. "What emperor?" An emperor is called the son of heaven. He is chosen by the heavens. Human king is the king of the human race. He is not restricted by the heavens and earth, on par with the heavens and earth, on par with the ancient gods. Do you understand? Yi Xian looked at the old woman. "Senior, don't be agitated, I am just asking." The old woman slowly closed her eyes, sad. The human race has actually forgotten the human king of the past. Yi Xian, at this time, the old woman looked at Yi Xian. "If she doesn't drink, will you?" Yi Xian asked, "Can I see the past life in this soup?" The old woman said, "Sure." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Let me see what I was like in my previous life." The old woman looked at Yi Xian. She handed the bowl to Yi Xian. Just as Yi Xian looked at it, the bowl of soup suddenly exploded. Bang! The old woman instantly retreated 1,000 feet. Yi Xian was speechless. Seven blinked and looked at Yi Xian curiously. In the distance, the old woman's expression was extremely ugly. How is this possible? With that, she appeared in front of Yi Xian again. She glared at Yi Xian. "Who were you in your past life?" Yi Xian helplessly said, "What are you asking? How would I know who I was in my past life?" With that, he said seriously, however, I feel that I was definitely a very powerful existence in my past life. I have no doubt about this. The old woman looked at Yi Xian. After a moment, she suddenly took out an ancient mirror and handed it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the ancient mirror. The mirror rippled like water. After a moment, the mirror suddenly shook violently. Soon, a gray world appeared in the mirror. At this time, the mirror suddenly exploded. The old woman retreated again. Yi Xian, in the distance, the old woman's expression was extremely ugly. Impossible, absolutely impossible. With that, she looked at Yi Xian. Even if you are the reincarnation of a human king, you can't destroy this rebirth mirror. Yi Xian thought for a moment. Then, he said, perhaps, I am even more powerful than a human king. The old woman said angrily, **T. In the history of the human race in the four-dimensional universe, human king is the strongest person. You. With that, she seemed to think of something. Her pupils suddenly shrank. You are not from the four-dimensional universe. Yi Xian was a little helpless. I don't know either. The old woman stared at Yi Xian. In the past, King Shi came into contact with people from the five-dimensional universe. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. People who came into contact with people from the five-dimensional universe? The old woman nodded. King Shi, with that, she paused for a moment. Then, she said, both of you are not simple. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. Then, he said, Senior, do you have any inheritance to pass down? The old woman looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said seriously, if Senior needs it, I will definitely not refuse. Shao Qi suddenly pulled on Yi Xian's sleeve. Restrain yourself. Yi Xian, the old woman glanced at Yi Xian. Do you know who I am? Yi Xian shook his head. Senior, you are? The old woman turned around and pointed to a pitch-black door not far away. And above the door, there were two big black words, Hell. Hell? Yi Xian frowned. What is that? The old woman said calmly, in the past, not only did King Shi establish human civilization and various human systems, but he also established the reincarnation system. When humans die of old age or when their lifespan is exhausted, their souls will enter a place. Yi Xian asked. Hell? The old woman nodded. After entering hell, you can drink the rebirth soup to end your past life and forget about this life. Then, you can cultivate the next life. Later, when the last human king was killed, many things also disappeared, including this reincarnation system. With that, she looked at Yi Xian. Enter this door and you can obtain the inheritance. Yi Xian hesitated and then asked, is it dangerous? The old woman looked at Yi Xian. Guess. Yi Xian, at this moment, the old woman looked at Shao Qi. If you control this hell, you can use it to establish the reincarnation system. It was obvious that she wanted Shao Qi to inherit this hell. This was because this hell was created by a human king. Shao Qi's inheritance was the best. Shao Qi looked at the door. Reincarnation system? The old woman nodded. There are 18 evil souls inside. They can all be used by you. Shao Qi looked at Yi Xian. Do you want it? Yi Xian looked at the old woman. No, I don't want it. With that, he took out the world prison pagoda and sighed. Haze, I am only interested in the inheritance of the fifth dimension. I am not interested in anything else. The old woman looked at the world prison pagoda in Yi Xian's hands. Her expression was solemn. Fifth dimension item, Yi Xian said calmly, it is just a pagoda. It is not worth mentioning. It is not worth mentioning. With that, he kept the world prison pagoda. The old woman looked at Yi Xian. Then, she looked at Shao Qi. Go in. Shao Qi nodded. She walked through the door. Only Yi Xian and the old woman were left. The old woman looked at Yi Xian. I have something that is suitable for you. But unfortunately, you said that you are only interested in fifth dimension items. Haze, Yi Xian. Roughly 2 hours later, Xiaoqi walked out. There was a blood-red mark on her forehead. The old woman looked at Xiaoqi. You succeeded? Xiaoqi nodded. The old woman asked. They didn't make things difficult for you? Xiaoqi looked at the old woman. She shook her head. They seemed happy. The old woman nodded. That's true. There won't be anyone better than you. Xiaoqi looked at the old woman. Are you coming with me? The old woman shook her head. I want to stay here. I don't want to care about the outside world. Xiaoqi nodded. She looked at Yi Xian. Let's go. Yi Xian nodded. The two of them were about to leave. At this moment, the old woman suddenly said, Young man. Yi Xian turned to look at the old woman. She pointed with her finger. A black stone appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not understand. This is? The old woman said, Soul Stone. If you embed this stone on your sword, it can increase its rank by at least 2 levels. Not only that, this thing is the nemesis of all souls. This soul does not only refer to the souls of humans, but also the souls of all living beings in the 4-dimensional universe. Apart from that, it can also nourish your soul. All soul attacks and soul techniques are useless against you. Of course, this doesn't mean that you are invincible. If you meet some special experts, like... Her expression became solemn. For example, that girl in the plain dress. In front of such people, all treasures are useless. Yi Xian bowed. Thank you. The old woman looked at Xiaoqi. This 4th dimension is no longer the human king era. Your appearance represents an anomaly. I'm afraid there will be many troubles in the future. Xiaoqi asked. What is there to be afraid of? The old woman looked at Xiaoqi for a long time. Finally, she nodded. You have the fate of a human king. You can go and find those fellows from the human king era. I believe that many of them are still alive. Xiaoqi asked. Are they strong? The old woman nodded. Those who are still alive are either very weak or extremely strong. Xiaoqi nodded. I understand. The old woman looked at Xiaoqi. Take care. Xiaoqi and Yi Xian turned and left. In the field, the old woman was silent for a long time. Finally, she turned and walked into the distance. Not long later, she completely disappeared into the distance. Yi Xian and Xiaoqi returned to the starry sky. At this moment, the demon lord's voice suddenly rang in Yi Xian's mind. That person just now was very strong. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. How strong? The demon lord said, slightly weaker than me. Yi Xian, the demon lord continued. Unfortunately, her body is gone. Moreover, her soul is incomplete. She should have been destroyed by someone. Otherwise, at her peak, she should be a peerless expert. Yi Xian said, Senior, do you know about the human king era? The demon lord said, I've heard a little. However, it's just a little. I don't know much. If I'm not wrong, the history of that era should have been erased by someone or some force. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Just as he was about to speak, Xiaoqi suddenly frowned and his expression turned cold. Yi Xian looked at Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi said, something has happened in the chaotic universe. P.S. Do you have any votes to vote for? If you do, please look at me. I will accept your votes without hesitation. Chapter 660. The Starry Sky of the Chaotic Universe. Shangguan Xian looked up at the starry sky, where tens of thousands of people stood. The army. The army from the black-yellow great world. The person in the lead was a middle-aged man. This person was Fang Yi. Behind him was the expeditionary army from the Black-Yellow Great World. The expeditionary army was the army used by the Black-Yellow Great World to expand their territory. The purpose of this army was to search for new universes and conquer them. There was no doubt about the strength of this army. Especially those who survived, it could be said that all of them were battle-hardened and had extremely rich combat experience. Besides Shangguan Xian, were Tendo and Yen Dao. Behind them were Shao Qi's guards, the Divine Martial Army, and the Paladin Regiment. There weren't many people, only 5,000 in total. But the aura of these 5,000 people was extremely strong. In terms of individual strength, these 5,000 people did not lose to the expeditionary army from the Black-Yellow Great World at all. Yen Dao asked, "Is there any news of His Majesty?" Shangguan Xian shook her head, "Too far, I can't contact him." Yen Dao looked up at the starry sky, "How should we deal with him?" Shangguan Xian suddenly floated out and soon arrived 100 zhang away from Fang Yi. Behind Shangguan Xian there were 3 more people besides Yen Dao. They were Xiang Qing, Xiang Yu, and Tendo. Fang Yi sized up Shangguan Xian, "You have 2 choices, surrender or die." Shangguan Xian smiled, "His Majesty once said that the Divine Kingdom will never bow to anyone." Fang Yi looked at Shangguan Xian, "That's because you didn't meet me." As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared. In the instant that Fang Yi disappeared, Xiang Qing and the other 2 behind Shangguan Xian also disappeared. Rumble. The starry sky shook violently and Yen Dao and the other 2 retreated nearly 1,000 zhang. Blood slowly flowed out from the corners of their mouths. Fang Yi appeared in front of Shangguan Xian, but at this moment, a figure suddenly charged at Fang Yi. Fang Yi frowned, turned around, and punched. Boom! The starry sky shook. A middle-aged man stood not far from Fang Yi. Zhou Yafu. Fang Yi glanced at Zhou Yafu and said, "I never thought there would be a transcendent martial god in this universe." Zhou Yafu looked at Fang Yi. "I've heard of your Xianhuang Great World. I've heard that wherever you go, you leave nothing behind. Is that true?" Fang Yi smiled. "It's true." Zhou Yafu stared fixedly at Fang Yi. "It seems you'll have to stop here in the Chaos Verse." Fang Yi laughed, "Do you know how many cosmoses we've encountered along the way? There were quite a few who were even more powerful than your Chaos Verse, but in the end, they all disappeared." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. In the distance, Zhou Yafu's pupils constricted and he punched out. Rumble. Along with an explosion, Zhou Yafu was instantly pushed back by over 10 kilometers. Fang Yi coldly looked at Zhou Yafu. "You're overestimating yourself." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hands in the air. In an instant, the surrounding space began to surge violently like boiling water. In the distance, Zhou Yafu's eyes were cold. He slowly clenched his right hand and a powerful force gathered in his fist. After a moment of silence, Zhou Yafu suddenly disappeared. Rumble. In the battlefield, a powerful force tore through space and headed straight for Fang Yi. A hint of disdain appeared on Fang Yi's face as he clasped his hands together. Rumble. The surrounding space suddenly trembled. In an instant, Zhou Yafu was directly sent flying. This time, he flew for over 10 kilometers. Seeing this scene, Shangguan Xian's face sank slightly. She knew that only Shao Qi and Yi Xian could deal with this Fang Yi. Shao Qi was extremely strong, Yi Xian had many tricks up his sleeves, and there was also Tower. But now, both of them were not here. How could they resist Fang Yi? In the air, Fang Yi turned to look at Shangguan Xian. He was about to make a move when a woman suddenly appeared in front of Shangguan Xian. Mu Nanji. Mu Nanji sized up Fang Yi. "You're not a God state expert." Fang Yi was expressionless. "I have to say, the quality of experts in this chaos verse is quite good." Mu Nanji smiled. "Do you know that little girl?" Fang Yi asked. "Divine Kingdom's Divine Lord?" Mu Nanji nodded. Fang Yi said indifferently, why? Mu Nanji smiled. You will regret looking down on her. Fang Yi shook his head. I have never looked down on her. Otherwise, I would not have come to this chaos verse. Mu Nanji's eyes narrowed. Because she is not here, that is why you are here. Fang Yi looked at Mu Nanji. Kill. Do not underestimate the enemy. As his voice fell, the expeditionary army behind him rushed out. Although there were only tens of thousands of them, their aura was like a million-strong army. Below, Shangguan Xian said softly, protect my divine kingdom. Protect my divine kingdom. Behind Shangguan Xian countless experts roared. In the next moment, everyone rushed towards the depths of the starry sky. In addition to the divine guards and personal guards, there was also the divine kingdom's paladin regiment and the 9th Legion. In addition, the experts of the Tang clan and the Monster clan were also there. Not only these two clans' experts, but the divine martial cities Wuyuan and sword sex experts were also there. Leading them was Lanxiu. As for Mu Nanji and Zhou Yafu, as well as the divine kingdom's Yen Dao and the other experts, they were restraining Fang Yi. Not long after, Fang Ye's expression gradually turned ugly. This was because he discovered that the expeditionary army was actually being suppressed by the experts of the Chaos Verse. Especially the Divine Kingdom's Genius, and Lanxiu, and the others. In front of the expeditionary army, they were practically invincible. But this time, the experts of the Divine Kingdom's divine list were all present. Especially the number 1 on the divine list, Yuan Yi. Her secret techniques were simply destructive in this kind of group battle. In the starry sky, Fang Ye's expression darkened. He discovered that it was not that he had underestimated the Divine Kingdom's ruler, but that he had underestimated the Divine Kingdom's low-end strength. It should be said that he had greatly underestimated them. After a moment of silence, Fang Yi suddenly opened his right hand. A golden arrow shot into the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. Seeing this scene, Shangguan Xian and the others' expressions darkened. Needless to say, Fang Yi must be calling for help. Shangguan Xian turned her head. Have the hidden guards go to the depths of the starry sky. In the dark, a black-robed man with a blade quietly retreated. Shangguan Xian looked into the depths of the starry sky and said softly, Your Majesty, you have to hurry back. In the depths of the distant starry sky, Yi Xian and Shao Qi sat on the Imperial starship and traveled at top speed. The Imperial starship's speed had reached its limit. On the bow of the Imperial starship, Shao Qi stood quietly. Not far behind her, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground, the soul-suppressing sword floating in front of him. Fuse. At this moment, he was fusing the soul stone with the soul-suppressing sword. He had to. This was not a simple matter. Fortunately, the soul-suppressing sword and the soul stone had the same attribute. It just needed to absorb a lot of spiritual energy, and he needed to mediate it. Time passed bit by bit, and the soul stone and the soul-suppressing sword fused more and more. At this moment, the soul-suppressing sword's aura also became stronger and stronger. At this moment, Little Soul said excitedly, Little Master, this soul stone is really, really, really good. If I fuse with it, I can easily surpass the God realm. Yi Xian smiled, What is above the God realm? Little Soul kept silent for a moment and then said, End realm. Yi Xian frowned, End realm? Little Soul said, Yes, it means to reach our own limits. The executing heaven sword in Little Master's hand should be the peak of the End realm. It has reached its own limit, and if it wants to break through again, it might need Little Master's help. Yi Xian asked, What do you need me to do? Little Soul said, The sword is extraordinary because of the person. If it wants to reach the legendary mortal sword, it will depend on Little Master's own sword path. Me too, if I want to reach the legendary mortal sword level, I will need Little Master's help. So, I will work hard with Little Master in the future. Yi Xian smiled, Let's work hard together. The soul-suppressing sword continued to fuse with the soul stone. About 2 hours later, the soul-suppressing sword suddenly trembled violently, and a powerful aura swept out from the soul-suppressing sword. As soon as this aura appeared, the surrounding space immediately boiled violently. At this moment, Seven, who was not far away, suddenly said, "Look." Yi Xian got up and walked beside Seven. He raised his head and looked into the distance. In the distance, a bunch of soldiers wearing black armor and holding spears were flying through the air. Just at this moment, Seven suddenly appeared in front of the bunch of soldiers, and they stopped right away. The leader stared at Seven. "Who are you?" Shao Qi sized up the general. "Are you people from the black-yellow great world?" The leader squinted. "How did you know?" Seven asked. "You want to head to the chaotic universe?" The leader frowned. "How did you know?" "Who are you?" Seven looked at Yi Xian. "You head back first, I will block them." Yi Xian looked at the leader. The leader's aura was really strong, and he was at least a God realm expert. More importantly, there were 100 people behind him, and there were at least 10 God realm experts and 30 Emperor realm experts. Moreover, their auras were very strong, not something an ordinary Emperor realm expert could compare to. Clearly, these were not ordinary people. Yi Xian said, "Together?" Seven shook her head. "In case there are any changes to the chaotic universe, you head first, I will follow." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then nodded. "Be careful." With that, he turned and disappeared into the distant stars. In front of Seven, the leader stared at her. "Do you know what you are doing?" Seven didn't waste any time. She opened her right hand and turned into a sword light that shot out. Wang! As the sword chime rang out, bloody heads flew out one after another in the distance. Roughly an hour later, Seven sheathed her sword, and in front of her was a ground of corpses. Seven looked coldly at the corpses, and turned to leave. But at this moment, her expression changed. Yi Xian pushed his speed to the limit, and with his current speed, he could reach the chaotic universe in an hour at most. Roughly an hour later, the Fiend Lord's voice suddenly rang out, "Danger." Yi Xian stopped. As soon as he stopped, his glabella was pierced through. Chapter 661. Sword. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, a sword pierced through his forehead. At this moment, Yi Xian was extremely shocked. The person who made the move was actually this fast. Without much thought, the moment the sword pierced through his forehead, he instinctively turned around and slashed down. Chi! The sword slashed down, but it cut through the air. Because there was nothing in front of him. Disappeared. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. He rubbed his forehead, and the sword there had disappeared. He had to admit that he was really shocked just now. If the opponent hadn't been holding a sword, the consequences would have been unthinkable. At this moment, the Demon Lord's voice suddenly sounded. "The opponent's concealment technique is quite special. Be careful." Yi Xian asked, "Senior, do you know the opponent's location?" The Demon Lord said, "I do, but do you really need me to tell you?" Yi Xian was silent. He naturally knew what the Demon Lord meant. If he needed the Demon Lord's help for everything, he would become more and more dependent on the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord said, "It's not good for me to expose myself now. Otherwise, it won't be good for you." Yi Xian asked, "Why?" The Demon Lord said, "Some special reasons. From now on, I will be in seclusion for a period of time. I hope that when I wake up, you will still be alive." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. The Demon Lord was in seclusion again. Actually, he was still a little confused, wondering why the Demon Lord didn't leave the prison pagoda. With the Demon Lord's strength, he could totally leave the prison pagoda. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian continued forward. About 15 minutes later, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. The Space Dao Law appeared between his brows. The next moment, the space around him trembled violently. An instant later, Yi Xian slashed to the right. Chi! A ray of sword light tore through space. 1,000 feet away, a figure suddenly appeared. As Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the figure retreated rapidly. Yi Xian looked coldly at the figure. From the figure, it should be a woman. A female assassin. However, the other party was dressed in black and wore a conical bamboo hat, making it impossible to see his true appearance. Yi Xian sized up the female assassin. Black-yellow great world? The woman didn't say anything and quietly disappeared. The moment the woman disappeared, Yi Xian also disappeared. In terms of concealment techniques, Yi Xian, would not lose to anyone. Yi Xian didn't bother with the assassin. Right now, his top priority was to return to the Chaos Verse as quickly as possible. The Chaos Verse. The battle in the starry sky of the Chaos Verse was extremely intense. Although the expeditionary army from the Xianhuang Great World had been suppressed by the geniuses and experts of the Divine Kingdom, they were still extremely powerful. The experts of the Chaos Verse wouldn't be able to wipe them out in a short period of time. Moreover, there were also some particularly outstanding experts in the expeditionary army. Fight. The battle between the two sides had reached its climax. In the air, Fang Yi coldly looked down. Not far in front of him were Mu Nanji and Zhou Yafu, as well as the Divine Kingdom's Yen Dao and other super experts. In a one-on-one fight, there was no one in the entire Chaos Verse who was a match for Fang Yi. In the distance, Yen Dao, who was next to Shangguanxian, suddenly said, "Let them fight?" Shangguanxian shook her head. "These people aren't worthy of them fighting." Yen Dao nodded. At this moment, Fang Yi suddenly disappeared. Yen Dao drew his sword and slashed. Mu Nanji and the others also attacked together. Rumble. In the starry sky, an explosion suddenly sounded, and an instant later, Fang Yi returned to his original position. At this moment, Fang Ye's face was quite gloomy. Although he was stronger than the people of the Chaos Verse, he couldn't do anything to these people in front of him if they joined forces. After a while, Fang Yi turned and looked into the depths of the starry sky. He frowned slightly. The reinforcements hadn't arrived yet. Did something happen? At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared beside Fang Yi. The old man said in a low voice, "There's an accident." Fang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked at Shangguanxian and the others. "I underestimated you." At this moment, a loud laugh suddenly came from the side. Fang Yi turned and looked. Not far from him, the space suddenly cracked, and then a middle-aged man walked out. Seeing this middle-aged man, Fang Ye's face darkened. The commander of the Northern Army, Xiao Biyao. Xiao Biyao looked at Fang Yi and said with a smile, "Brother Fang, it seems you can't handle it." Fang Ye's face was expressionless. "Xiao Biyao, I heard that 100 people of your Northern Army were wiped out." Xiao Biao's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're quite well informed." Fang Yi said with a smile, "Whether it's on my side or on your side, there's no way to devour this Chaos Verse." Cooperation? Xiao Biyao said with a smile, "Sure, but my goal is Yi Xian and Divine Martial City." Fang Yi stared at Xiao Biyao. "You want to take that treasure for yourself?" Xiao Biyao said with a smile, "Brother Fang, the mission of your expeditionary army is to conquer the universe. That treasure is not part of your mission. Of course, if you want it, it's not impossible. But it's a bit too late to discuss this now. Once we get it, we can discuss its ownership. How about it?" Fang Yi was silent for a moment, then nodded, "Sure." Xiao Biyao laughed, and then said, "You hold them back." As he spoke, he looked down at Anlanxiu. "This person should be Yi Xian's confidant. I'm very curious if Yi Xian will choose that treasure or his confidant when he returns." Nearby, Shangguanxian suddenly said, "Your Excellency, it's best not to touch his family." Xiao Biyao looked at Shangguanxian, "Why?" Shangguanxian looked straight at Xiao Biyao. "Our city lord Yi is usually carefree and likes to swindle people. He looks harmless, but he'll be very angry if anyone touches his family." Angry? Xiao Biyao said with a smile, "I like to see my enemies angry. The angrier they are, the happier I am." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished. Down below, the expression of Enlancio, who was fighting someone, suddenly changed. She swiftly raised her head and stabbed out with her spear. Rumble. Enlancio instantly retreated a few hundred meters in a single stab. Xiao Biyao sized up Enlancio and said softly, "Your strength isn't bad." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward. Rumble. The space and the surroundings trembled violently like an earthquake was occurring, and it was extremely shocking. Shangguan Xian's expression changed when she saw this scene. Help her. Enlancio was extremely monstrous, but she was absolutely unable to go against Xiao Biyao. After all, Xiao Biyao was an expert above the god rank realm. Mu Nanji and the others were about to attack, but Fang Yi forcefully stopped them. In the distance, bang! Along with an explosion, Enlancio was blasted flying once more. As soon as she stopped, a wisp of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of Enlancio's mouth. Enlancio wiped off the blood on the corner of her mouth. In the next moment, she suddenly charged forward swiftly and stabbed her spear forward. This spear strike was like a thunderclap that flashed by. A wisp of disdain suffused the corners of Xiao Biao's mouth as he clenched his right hand into a fist and smashed it forward. Bang! This strike forcefully stopped Enlancio's spear strike. At the same time, he suddenly appeared in front of Enlancio, and then he smashed his fist towards her face. Enlancio's eyes narrowed slightly, and then she flashed forward and smashed her fist forward. She couldn't retreat at all. Once she did, then the situation she was in would become even worse. Moreover, Xiao Biao's speed far surpassed her, so she couldn't retreat as well. In next to no time, Enlancio's fist smashed onto Xiao Biao's fist. Bang! Enlancio was instantly blasted flying. At the same time, her entire right arm was blasted into pieces. After Enlancio stopped moving, blood was flowing from the corner of her mouth. Xiao Biyao gazed at Enlancio and said with a smile, "Needless to say, I like this feeling. The feeling of the strong bullying the weak. Do you know why? Because in this way, I can control the lives of others at will." As he spoke, he glanced at the members of Divine Martial City and said, "I'll annihilate everyone related to Yi Xian in this world, and then I'll hang your heads in the starry sky." I really want to see his furious appearance. When he spoke up to here, he suddenly turned around to look at Enlancio and smiled, "The heavens are benevolent, so I can let you live. However, you have to pay a price. Do you understand what I mean?" Enlancio wiped off the blood on the corner of her mouth with her left hand, and then she slowly clenched it. Meanwhile, Xiao Biyao said, "You're his lover. If you betray him and get involved with another man in front of him, then don't you think he would be furious?" Ha ha ha. Enlancio looked Xiao Biyao in the eyes and said, "Did he sleep with your wife?" Xiao Biao's eyes narrowed slightly. Enlancio continued, "Otherwise, why do you hate him so much?" Xiao Biyao gazed at Enlancio and smiled, "I like women who are stubborn the most. Because only in this way can it feel good to subdue them." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. In the distance, Enlancio suddenly clenched her left hand tightly, and then she smashed her fist forward. Rumble. The space and the surroundings trembled violently, and then Enlancio was blasted flying once more. This time, her left hand had warped and warped. The gap in their cultivations was too huge. Enlancio raised her head and looked towards the depths of the starry sky while traces of ripples arose in her eyes. She seemed to be recalling the past. All those years ago in Pine City. They'd met at the beginning of that year. The white-clothed woman, the young and inexperienced young man. Did she like him? She didn't know. All she knew was that she had a good impression of him when they first met. Even though she didn't know when he'd gradually become shameless, but he hadn't been like this all those years ago. At that time, perhaps it was because his younger sister was ill, but he'd lived a very oppressive life. Later on, when his younger sister recovered from her illness, his skin grew thicker and thicker, and it was impossible to stop. Fortunately, his heart had never changed. He was still that young man, but his skin was much thicker than it was in the past. Thinking back to that time in the martial courtyard, when he confessed to her, and Lancio slowly closed her eyes. It was enough. Getting to know each other and getting to know each other was enough. When she thought up to here, the profound energy within Lancio's body started to surge. In the distance, Xiao Biyao walked towards Lancio while a wisp of a smile hung on the corners of his mouth. Want to commit suicide? You might not get what you want. I'll subdue you. Ha ha ha. As he spoke, he was about to attack. However, right at this moment, a wave of savage laughter suddenly resounded from afar. Subdue my woman? Who the fuck do you think you are? Xiao Biyao stopped and turned around to look. Everyone present also looked towards the starry sky. In that starry sky, a swordsman man was rushing towards them like a madman. At the same time, the swordsman man's voice resounded through the starry sky like thunder. 1. Sword. Infinite. P.S. Thank you, Brother Air Day, for becoming the Alliance Master. Pleasantly surprised. I've been too busy lately, so I haven't been reading the book review section. Sorry. As for the issue of updating, once I'm done with my work for the next few days, I'll do it again. You all know that I've never let you down. Finally, I'd like to thank all the readers who gave me gifts and votes, as well as the readers who subscribed. After the update, I'll send out a red packet of 20,000 cross-ring coins. Only the readers who subscribe to this book will be able to receive it. Everyone, remember to receive it. It's just a small token of my appreciation, so please accept it. After you receive it, everyone, make an appearance. Don't type. This is making an appearance. One shouldn't be too shameless. Chapter 662. As soon as the final word was spoken. A sword howl suddenly shot into the sky. At this moment, practically the entire chaotic universe could hear this sword howl. Not only that, but as soon as this sword hum rang out, all of the swords in the entire chaos verse began to tremble violently, resonating with it. A ray of light flashed through the starry sky like a shooting star. The expressions of everyone in the starry sky changed when they saw it. It should be described as terror. All the experts present revealed expressions of terror. This sword strike made all of them feel the aura of death. It was especially so for Xiao Biyao. He could smell the scent of death the moment he saw the sword light. Death. At this moment, his face was pale as a sheet. Because a voice in the depths of his heart was telling him that he would definitely die. However, he didn't just stand there and wait for death. He roared furiously, circulated all the profound energy within his body, and executed his strongest attack. However, his strongest attack seemed so insignificant in the face of the sword light. Moreover, his energy vanished without a trace when it was still 3 kilometers away from the ray of light. That attack. It disregarded everything. An instant later, Xiao Biao's figure stiffened on the spot, and then he started to vanish bit by bit. Meanwhile, a young swordsman appeared in front of him. It was Yi Xian. Xiao Biyao gazed at Yi Xian with a bewildered expression. What sword technique was that? It was. He hadn't even finished speaking when he vanished without a trace. He didn't just vanish. His soul, karma, fate, and everything else had vanished as well. Simply speaking, he'd been completely obliterated by that attack. The surroundings were deathly silent. Everyone was dumbstruck. A single attack. That attack had instantly annihilated Xiao Biyao, who was at the god rank realm. Yi Xian paid no attention to them. He turned around and walked over to Lancio. Lancio had stopped detonating herself. Yi Xian's face gradually warped when he saw Lancio's state, and the executing heaven sword in his hand started to tremble violently. Lancio spoke softly, "I'm fine." Yi Xian suddenly turned around. Bang! A ray of red light shot into the sky from within him. Bloodline activation. Almost instantly, Yi Xian's hair turned blood red. Yi Xian looked at Fang Yi and said savagely, "One sword." Fang Ye's expression changed drastically when he heard this, and he immediately said, "Retreat." With that, he turned around and left. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly rushed out. Buzz! A blood-red ray of light flashed through the battlefield. "Kill!" In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly roared. His voice was like that of a wild beast. Yi Xian charged directly into the midst of the expeditionary army. Streaks of blood-red sword light swept out in all directions like a dense rainstorm. Everywhere it passed, corpses were strewn everywhere. At the end of the starry sky, Fang Yi suddenly stopped and turned to look at where Yi Xian was. At this moment, Yi Xian was madly chasing after his expeditionary army. The expeditionary army's speed was not as fast as Yi Xian. Moreover, Yi Xian's sword was too sharp, and a bloody head would fall with every slash. Fang Yi was about to attack when an old man beside him suddenly said, "General, you can't die. You have to think about the bigger picture." Fang Yi stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and the murderous intent in his eyes was almost tangible. The old man said solemnly, "General, this person cannot be defeated. Please think about the bigger picture." Fang Yi looked at Yi Xian, who was killing madly in the distance. "Yi Xian, my black-yellow great world will remember you." In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and looked at Fang Yi with a ferocious expression. "Please kill me." Fang Yi glanced coldly at Yi Xian, then turned around and left. Behind him, miserable screams rang out incessantly. A massacre. After the activation of his bloodline, Yi Xian's combat strength could be said to have increased by several levels. In addition, he held the executing heaven sword in his hand. Therefore, wherever he passed, almost no one could stop him. In addition, the experts of God Nation were also attacking. Therefore, in a short while, the expeditionary army was completely wiped out. All of them were beheaded. However, Fang Yi and the few people in the lead had already escaped. In the starry sky, Yi Xian stood quietly. Around him, an extremely powerful aura constantly shook the surroundings. Bloodline power. Yi Xian's eyes were closed, and his right hand tightly grasped the sword in his hand, which was trembling. Suppress. He was suppressing the bloodline power in his body. In fact, after the bloodline power was activated, he had never completely released its power. He did not dare to release it completely. Because he knew that if he continued to release it, he might lose himself. The power of this bloodline was simply too terrifying. About half an hour later, Yi Xian opened his eyes. At this time, he had already returned to normal. After recovering, Yi Xian turned around and walked in front of Enlancio. He opened his right hand, and a white jade bottle appeared in front of Enlancio. Enlancio did not refuse. She opened the jade bottle and swallowed 2 thumb-sized medicinal pills. As soon as the medicinal pills entered her body, the injuries on Enlancio's body began to recover at an extremely fast speed. A hint of surprise flashed in Enlancio's eyes. She looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was also a little shocked in his heart. He did not expect the effect of this medicinal pill to be so good. This was a good thing. At this time, Shangguan Xian, and the others came to Yi Xian's side. Shangguan Xian, bowed slightly to Yi Xian, "City Lord Yi, where is His Majesty?" At this time, when God Nation and others looked at Yi Xian, there was a trace of respect in their eyes compared to before. Yi Xian glanced around. "Little Seven hasn't returned yet?" Shangguan Xian's face sank. "Isn't His Majesty with you?" Yi Xian looked towards the depths of the starry sky. He fell silent for a moment before he said, "Something is slightly unusual. I'll go take a look." As soon as he finished speaking, he transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the distance. Shangguan Xian and the other experts hurriedly followed after him. 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived at the place where he and Little Seven had parted ways. At this moment, the space here had turned pitch black. The space within a radius of 1,000,000 zhang had been destroyed. Yi Xian's face sank when he saw this scene. Did something happen to little Seven? The faces of the divine nation experts who had come with Yi Xian also darkened. Right at this moment, a sword suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Little Seven's sword. Yi Xian grabbed Little Seven's sword, and the sword trembled slightly as if it was saying something. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Shaoling, what is it saying? Shaoling appeared by Yi Xian's side, and she glanced at the sword. After a moment, she looked at Yi Xian. It said that the little girl wants you to temporarily take over the position of emperor. Temporarily take over the position of emperor. The experts of the divine kingdom were stunned when they heard this. Temporarily take over the position of emperor? Meanwhile, Shangguan grabbed little Seven's sword. Where is his majesty? The sword trembled slightly. Shangguan turned to look at Shaoling, and Shaoling, blinked and said, something happened. Shangguan asked again, what happened? The sword swayed left and right. Shaoling said, it doesn't know, but something happened. Because that big sister threw it out. Shangguan face instantly turned pale like a sheet of paper. Obviously, little Seven had definitely encountered something, and that was why it had thrown the sword out. What exactly was it? Xianhuang Great World? After a moment of silence, Shangguan turned and shouted, let the entire Tianji sect follow His Majesty's path. Yes. An expert of the Divine Kingdom left quietly. At the scene, the experts of the Divine Kingdom had ugly expressions. Little Seven. She was the backbone of the Divine Kingdom. Yi Xian's eyes slowly closed. Senior, are you there? The Demon Lord did not respond. Obviously, the Demon Lord was already in closed-door cultivation. Yi Xian's face sank, and he looked into the distance, his eyes filled with confusion. With little Seven's strength, ordinary people would not be able to do anything to her. What exactly had happened to her? At this moment, a white-robed elder came to Shangguan side. This person was Tianji sect head. Shangguan looked at Tianji sect head. How is it? Tianji sect head shook his head. There's no news. Shangguan frowned. What do you mean? Tianji sect head said solemnly, there are 3 possibilities. First, His Majesty is too far away from here, and we can't sense him. Second, His Majesty is being forcefully concealed. Third, His Majesty has fallen. Shangguan suddenly shouted, how could he have fallen? Tianji sect head sighed, and did not speak. At this moment, little Seven's sword suddenly trembled, and a golden seal floated out of the sword. This seal floated in front of Yi Xian. God Lord Seal. Seeing this scene, the experts of the Divine Kingdom were silent. Obviously, little Seven wanted Yi Xian to temporarily take over the position of God Nation King. The experts of the Divine Kingdom were silent. Yi Xian suddenly turned and left. Seeing this scene, everyone looked at each other in dismay. After Yi Xian left, he came to a starry sky. The next moment, the space Dao law between his eyebrows suddenly appeared. 100 feet to his right, a shadow floated. This person was the female assassin that had tried to assassinate him earlier. The female assassin wore a bamboo hat, and her appearance could not be seen clearly. In her left hand, she held a sword that looked like a fish bone. Yi Xian looked at the female assassin. Did you do it for her to disappear? The female assassin fell silent for a moment, and then she said, why didn't you die after taking a strike from my sword? Yi Xian looked at her. I'll answer one question, and you answer one of mine. The female assassin nodded. All right. Yi Xian said, a special cultivation technique. The female assassin asked, what cultivation technique? Yi Xian said, that's the second question. The female assassin fell silent. Yi Xian asked, did you do it for her to disappear? The female assassin shook her head, no. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. Then who was it? The female assassin said, that's the second question. Yi Xian said in a low voice, ask. The female assassin asked, you can swallow all swords? Yi Xian nodded. The female assassin asked again, what was that sword technique you executed earlier? Yi Xian said, boundless sword, an unparalleled martial technique of the fifth dimension. The female assassin fell silent for a moment, and then she said, don't think about saving her. She's been targeted by those people. Yi Xian frowned slightly, who? The female assassin fell silent. Yi Xian asked, you can't tell me? The female assassin fell silent for a long time, and then she said, I dare not. Chapter 663. He didn't dare say it. Yi Xian's face darkened. What faction was targeting Little Seven? After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked at the female assassin. Why did you come to kill me? The female assassin didn't answer. She quietly disappeared. Yi Xian sensed the surrounding space and found that she had completely disappeared. Gone. Yi Xian frowned. Who was targeting Little Seven? Also, who sent this female assassin? He had so many questions. At this moment, Shangguan Xian suddenly walked over. Yi Xian looked at Shangguan Xian She said softly, you are now the temporary ruler of the theocracy. Yi Xian shook his head. I'm not suitable. With that, he turned and left. Ruler of the theocracy? He really wasn't interested. Moreover, the people of the theocracy wouldn't like him to be the divine lord. At this moment, Shangguan Xian stood in front of Yi Xian. She looked straight at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, are you friends with His Majesty? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Shangguan Xian said solemnly, Young Master Yi, if you don't become the divine lord, there will likely be internal strife in the theocracy. Yi Xian frowned. Internal strife? Shangguan Xian nodded. The theocracy seems very united, but there are some internal conflicts. Previously, with His Majesty suppressing them, no one dared to pick on them. But now that His Majesty is missing, if no one suppresses them, the theocracy will likely fall apart. Moreover, with the enemy before us, if there is no leader, won't the chaos verse be bullied by the people of the Xuanhuan Great World? Yi Xian fell silent. Shangguan Xian said, His Majesty personally chose you because he believes that you can lead the chaos verse well. Moreover, young Master Yi, your current strength is enough to convince the masses. You are the best candidate. At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. Your Imperial Majesty, I'm sure you don't want to see your divine kingdom descend into chaos, and you don't want to see our chaos verse be devoured by the Xianhuang Great World. Yi Xian said softly, Miss Shangguan, it's not that I'm being unreasonable, it's just that I'm not suitable to be the ruler of divine nations. Moreover, if I become the ruler, there will definitely be many people in your divine nations who won't accept it. I don't want any unpleasant things to happen. Shangguan Xian said solemnly, there is no one more suitable than you. Yi Xian said, your god nation has many talents, and, Shangguan Xian, looked straight at Yi Xian, His Majesty chose you. You are justified. If someone else were to take the position, there would really be internal strife. Yi Xian was silent. Shangguan Xian continued, you are His Majesty's friend. Moreover, if you become a divine master, you will definitely continue to search for His Majesty. But if someone else becomes a divine master, that might not be the case. Friends. Yi Xian was silent for a long time, and then nodded, okay. Hearing this, Shangguan Xian relaxed, young Master Yi, come with me to the Order City now. I'll give you a proper name now. Before His Majesty returns, you are the divine master of my divine nations and have all the rights. Yi Xian nodded, okay. Soon, Yi Xian, Shangguan Xian, and the others returned to the Order City. Inside the temple, Yi Xian sat on the seat that Shaoqi once sat on. Below him were the experts of divine nations. Many familiar faces. Yi Xian stood up, he glanced at the people in the temple. I'm a straightforward person, so I won't beat around the bush. Shao Qi is missing, and now I am the ruler of divine nations. If you have any objections, you can raise them now. The temple was very quiet, no one spoke. Yi Xian said, since you're all silent, then I'll take it that you have no objections. Dismissed. After saying that, he got up and prepared to leave. But at this time, an old man suddenly stood up. He looked straight at Yi Xian. I don't think you're suitable to be the ruler of my divine nations. Before Yi Xian could speak, Shengguan suddenly said, he was appointed by His Majesty. The old man shook his head. My divine nations rule states that the ruler can only be a person of divine nations, and Lord Yi is not a person of my divine nations. Shengguan looked straight at the old man. He was appointed by His Majesty. The old man looked straight at Shengguan you're just a counselor beside His Majesty, you have no right to interrupt. Shengguan was expressionless. Zhang Gu, I respect you very much, but I'll emphasize again, he was appointed by His Majesty, so it's equivalent to His Majesty's decree, do you understand? Zhang Gu sneered, His Majesty appointed? Isn't that just your one-sided words? Shengguan looked at Zhang Gu, it's not that His Majesty won't come back, Zhang Gu, you have to understand what you're doing now. Hearing this, Zhang Ji's face turned ugly, but he quickly recovered. He looked at the crowd, everyone, it's not like there's no one in my divine nations, why do we need an outsider to be our divine lord? At this time, Yi Xian suddenly looked at Yan Dao not far away, kill him. Yan Dao looked at Yi Xian, but did not make a move. Yi Xian smiled, look, you said you'd recognize me as your divine lord, but no one in your divine nations obeyed my orders. This divine lord position is too depressing, it's better not to. With that, he turned and left. But at this time, a cold light suddenly flashed from below. Chi! Zhang Ji's head flew off. Blood splattered. Everyone was shocked. Yi Xian looked in front of Zhang Gu. There stood a man in black with a blade. A dark guard. The dark guard bowed slightly to Yi Xian. His Majesty has ordered us to obey City Lord Ye's orders. As soon as the voice rang out, 20 people suddenly appeared in the main hall. All of them were dark guards. The moment these 20 people appeared, the atmosphere instantly turned cold. Dark guards. That was the blade in the hands of the divine nation's divine lord. No one expected that Shao Qi would hand this blade to Yi Xian. In the hall, Yi Xian looked at Shengguan gather all the troops of the divine nation, I want them to be loyal to me. At this time, he understood that only the divine nation's troops were loyal to him. Could he control everything in the divine nation, including suppressing these messy forces? Shengguan glanced at Yi Xian, and then she pointed with her finger, causing a sword to fly out. In just a moment, the Paladin Order, Shenwu Army, and Guard Army all appeared. Yi Xian walked over to the soldiers and took out the godly lord's seal that Shao Qi had given him. Shao Qi gave this to me before he left. He asked me to temporarily assume the position of divine nation's ruler, and I need your loyalty. Do any of you have any objections? After a moment of silence, everyone knelt on one knee. Greetings, Divine Lord. Divine Lord. The expressions of everyone in the hall instantly fell when they saw this scene. It could be said that the outcome had been decided. Now, not only did Yi Xian control the Dark Guards, but he also controlled the Paladin Order, Guard Army, and Shenwu Army. It could be said that Yi Xian controlled around 70% of the divine nation's troops, and anyone who resisted now would undoubtedly be going head-on against Yi Xian. Moreover, Yan Dao, Xiang Qing, and the others were obviously on Yi Xian's side. At this time, Yi Xian walked into the hall and glanced at everyone. Now that our chaotic universe is facing a great enemy, the black-yellow great world, I do not wish for internal strife at this time. Moreover, Shao Qi's whereabouts are unknown. Our priority now is to find her and discuss how to resist the black-yellow great world. So, if anyone wants to cause internal strife at this time, I will not be lenient. Internal strife. He was very clear about one thing, in front of a great enemy, there must be no internal strife. With that, Yi Xian turned and left. In the hall, everyone looked at each other. At this time, the divine image suddenly said, "City Lord Yi is right, our priority now is to find His Majesty and resist the black-yellow great world. Before that, no one is allowed to cause trouble." With that, he turned and left. In the hall, everyone retreated. Yi Xian brought Shengguan Xian, to the Celestial Arcanum sect. This was because the Celestial Arcanum sect was the largest intelligence organization in the divine nation. Yi Xian found the Celestial Arcanum sect leader. "Any news about Shaoqi?" The Celestial Arcanum sect leader shook his head. "We have used all our strength and also sought help from some mysterious organizations in other universes, but we still have not received any reply." With that, he paused. "If even we can't find anything, I'm afraid those people won't be able to find anything either." Yi Xian thought about it, then waved his right hand and an image appeared in front of the Celestial Arcanum sect leader. It was a portrait of that female assassin. The Celestial Arcanum sect leader frowned. "This is?" Yi Xian said, "An assassin. She seems to know something about Dao Yi, you can check her background." The Celestial Arcanum sect leader nodded slightly. "I will check it myself." Yi Xian said again, "Get your men to pay close attention to the movements of the black-yellow great world." The Celestial Arcanum sect leader glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. "We will do that. Once there is any movement, we will inform you immediately." Yi Xian nodded, then turned and left with Shengguan Xian. On the way, Yi Xian asked, "What's the trump card of the God Nation?" Shengguan Xian went silent. Yi Xian asked, "You can't say?" Shengguan Xian shook her head. "Our trump card now is the Dao Execution Army, and some things left behind by the previous God Lord of the God Nation, like the split soul." Yi Xian asked again, "Anything else?" Shengguan Xian said, "There's also a big array, called the Dao Execution Array, which was left behind by God Lord Wu Anning. It's considered one of the trump cards of the God Nation." Yi Xian asked, "Where is the Dao Execution Army?" Shengguan Xian shook her head. "You can't command them." Yi Xian looked at Shengguan Xian. The latter said solemnly, "You can't for now. These people only obey the orders of the God Lord. Although you have the God Nation's God seal, you haven't accepted His Majesty's inheritance, so you are not considered a true God Lord." Yi Xian went silent. Shengguan Xian said again, "Don't think too much. This army only listens to the orders of the God Lord, and only the previous God Lords know how to mobilize them. I can contact them, but that's also because His Majesty authorized me before, and His Majesty didn't authorize me to command them, so without His Majesty's special order, I can't mobilize them." Yi Xian asked, "How strong are they?" Shengguan Xian looked at Yi Xian. "Very strong. There are many experts above the God realm." Above the God realm. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, he suddenly looked up at the starry sky. There, an old man quietly appeared. In the Order City, countless experts looked at this old man. The old man looked around, and finally, he directly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian. "This old man comes from the black-yellow great world's northern region. I'm here to give you a big fortune." "A big fortune?" Yi Xian looked at the old man. "What fortune?" The old man smiled slightly. "The king of the northern region wants to adopt you as his son. This is a great fortune for you." Yi Xian. P.S. Today, I, Luan, calculated with my fingers, 10 million monthly votes. Chapter 664. Adopt him as a son. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. What kind of operation was this? Shengguan Xian had a strange expression on her face. Adopt Yi Xian as a son? Was he trying to persuade Yi Xian to surrender? In front of Yi Xian, the old man smiled slightly. "Don't think that he's looking down on you. On the contrary, the northern region king thinks highly of you. That's why he wants to adopt you. You probably don't know what it means to be the northern region king's adopted son." As he spoke, he walked not far from Yi Xian and said, "As the northern region king's adopted son, in the northern territory of the black-yellow Great World, not only will you have a noble status, but you will also have real power. It can be said that you are truly second only to the Northern Region King. Not only that, as long as you become the Northern Region King's adopted son, you will have wealth and peerless beauties at your fingertips. Yi Xian said seriously, do I look like a greedy person? The old man looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, isn't it normal for young people to be greedy for money? In my black-yellow Great World, there are many beauties. As long as you become the Northern Region King's adopted son, you will have countless peerless beauties at your disposal. Shangguan Xian looked at Yi Xian, her expression becoming more and more strange. Yi Xian's expression also became somewhat ugly. He admitted that he was greedy for money. After all, he was once a poor person. But the problem was, how could he describe this greed? Was he greedy? He was very pure. At this time, the old man said again, Yi Xian, I have to say that the strength of your chaotic universe is indeed not bad. However, if you had seen my black-yellow Great World, you would not have any thoughts of resisting. And now, the Northern Region King has taken a liking to you and wants to adopt you as his son. This is a great blessing for you. You must cherish this opportunity. Yi Xian looked at the old man and said with a smile, if my guess is correct, in return, I should offer you that fifth-dimensional treasure. Not only that, but I should also offer you the entire chaotic universe, right? The elder looked at Yi Xian, you are a smart person. Yi Xian patted his thigh and smiled, I don't have the habit of kneeling. The old man looked at Yi Xian. After a moment, he smiled. I understand. With that, he turned around and left. Before long, the old man disappeared into the boundless horizon. In the same place, Yi Xian said softly, looks like they're serious. Shangguan Xian nodded. She looked at Yi Xian. We are far weaker than the forces of the Xianhuang realm, but they won't send all their experts to the Chaos Verse. When she spoke up to hear, she paused for a moment and said, what do you plan to do? Plan? Yi Xian said softly, what else can we do? We can't just surrender, right? Given the way the Xianhuang Great World operated, even if the Chaos Verse surrendered, it wouldn't meet a good end. Shangguan Xian nodded, I know a lot of things about the Divine Kingdom. If you need anything, you can come to me. Yi Xian nodded, help me find 2 people. Shangguan Xian asked, who? Yi Xian waved his right hand and 2 portraits appeared in front of Shangguan Xian Shangguan Xian took a look and nodded, sure. Yi Xian hesitated and said, there's one more person. With that, he waved his right hand and a portrait appeared in front of Shangguan Xian Shangguan Xian took a look and nodded, understood. With that, she left quietly. After Shangguan Xian left, Yi Xian returned to the Shenwu city. As soon as he arrived at the gate of the Shenwu city, Yi Xian was stunned. There was a woman standing at the gate. He knew this person. It was Zhao Mu who had disappeared for a long time. And now, Zhao Mu had also reached the Emperor realm. Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian walked in front of Zhao Mu and smiled. Miss Zhao, long time no see. I missed you. Zhao Mu suddenly punched the ground. Boom! The ground exploded. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. What was the meaning of this? Zhao Mu took a look at Yi Xian and left. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he followed her. Soon, Yi Xian followed Zhao Mu to the peak of a mountain. In front of a wooden house, he saw the Southern Sect Martial Master. But at this moment, the Southern Sect Martial Master's face was not good. Yi Xian frowned, Senior, you? The Southern Sect Martial Master smiled, Little friend Yi, long time no see. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Senior, you? The Southern Sect Martial Master said softly, my time is up. My time is up. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what do you mean? The Southern Sect Martial Master smiled, failed to reach the God realm. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, how is that possible? Senior? The southern sect martial master said softly, to reach the god realm, I need too much tendo source. I thought I didn't need this tendo source, but, saying this, the smile on his face became bitter, even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Saying this, he looked at Yi Xian, this time, I asked you to come because I have a favor to ask of you. Zhao Mu, that lass, she couldn't speak for some reason since she was young. Plus, she rarely goes out. Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, please wait. Saying this, he took out a white jade bottle and handed it to the southern sect martial master. This bottle of medicine is for healing, please take it first. The southern sect martial master shook his head, no. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Senior, try it first. The southern sect warrior glanced at Yi Xian, then took the white jade bottle. He took a look at the white jade bottle, then swallowed an elixir. Soon, a wave of pure energy emanated from his body. The southern sect martial master's eyes flashed with shock. He looked at Yi Xian, this is? Yi Xian said with a smile, I robbed it from the black-yellow great world. Saying this, he flicked his finger, and a thumb-sized pill landed in front of the southern sect martial master. This pill seems to be called a divine pill, specially used to reach the emperor realm. Senior, you can try it. The southern sect martial master hesitated, then shook his head, too precious. Saying this, he returned the emperor pill to Yi Xian. Yi Xian said with a smile, Senior, back at the Great Wall, only you spoke for me, I have always remembered this favor. As for this pill, it is just a small token of my appreciation, please don't refuse it, Senior. The southern sect martial master looked at Yi Xian with a complicated expression. A moment later, the southern sect martial master swallowed the emperor pill and began to break through to the emperor realm. Yi Xian and Zhao Mu stood guard on the other side. Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu, then waved his right hand, and dozens of Dao realm treasures landed in front of Zhao Mu. Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said with a smile, choose one. Zhao Mu shook his head. Yi Xian said, choose one to defend yourself. Dao realm treasures were still very important. In this world, strength wasn't the only thing that mattered, equipment was also important. Zhao Mu still didn't choose. Yi Xian chose one and handed it to Zhao Mu. Then he took out 3 white jade bottles and a storage ring and handed them to Zhao Mu. Among these 3 white jade bottles, some are for healing, and some are for stabilizing your level. They are all suitable for you. There are 100 million divine crystals in this storage ring, use them first, if it's not enough, come find me. Finished speaking, he put down the white jade bottles and storage ring, then turned and left. Behind Yi Xian, Zhao Mu looked at the white jade bottles and storage ring for a long time, not saying a word. After Yi Xian returned to Shenwu City, he found Enlanxiu. Her injuries were almost healed. Inside the room, Enlanxiu looked at Yi Xian. They will come again, right? Yi Xian nodded. Enlanxiu said, what plan? Yi Xian said with a smile, what else can we do? We can only fight them. Enlanxiu said, there is a great disparity in strength. Yi Xian said, there is no other way, the black-yellow great world is too strong, even if we surrender, we won't have a good ending, we can only fight. Enlanxiu nodded, as if thinking of something, she asked, what about Little Seven? Little Seven. Yi Xian's face gradually sank, there might be other forces in the dark. At this point, he looked at Enlanxiu, I'll call for help too. Call for help. Enlanxiu looked at Yi Xian, who? Yi Xian said with a smile, you'll know when the time comes. After chatting with Enlanxiu for a while, Yi Xian returned to the Order City. In the room, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him were 5 Dao Realm swords. His greatest trump cards were the World Prison Pagoda and the Infinite Sword. The lethality of the Infinite Sword was too strong. It could directly disregard any realm. Moreover, after killing someone, he could automatically enter the realm of emptiness. Simply put, his sword technique was suitable for assassination and escape. His greatest weakness now was that his realm wasn't enough. He had to increase his realm. Yi Xian picked up a Dao realm sword and stabbed it into his abdomen. Absorb. Yi Xian's entire face revealed an intoxicated expression. It was too comfortable. The energy of this Dao realm sword was much purer than the Fate realm sword. These 5 Dao realm swords could completely increase his realm by another level. While Yi Xian was cultivating, more and more experts returned to the God Nation. These were all summoned back by Little Seven in the name of the God Master. One must know that there were many experts in the God race, many of whom were outside, and now, these experts were rushing back to the God Nation. These experts had a strong sense of belonging to the God Nation. In the vast starry sky, a huge starship slowly flew by. This starship was nearly 10,000 feet long and several thousand feet wide. Above the starship, there was a rock demonic beast. The rock's body was even bigger than the starship. It was simply covering the sky. On the head of the rock stood a middle-aged man. This person was the marshal of the northern region, Lian Xiaotian. He controlled almost 80% of the northern region's army. In the northern region, he was truly below 1 and above tens of thousands. Behind Lian Xiaotian stood 2 old men and a man. This man was Fang Yi. The middle-aged man in the lead said softly, "Is that sword of his really that strong?" Fang Yi nodded slightly, "Very strong." Thinking of Yi Xian's sword back then, he still had lingering fear. That sword, he could not block it at all. The middle-aged man smiled slightly, "This is getting interesting." With that said, he looked into the distance and said softly, "I never thought that this chaotic universe would have such hidden talents." Fang Yi bowed slightly, "This subordinate is useless." Lian Xiaotian shook his head, "It was us who underestimated the chaotic universe." With that said, he slowly clenched his right hand. 5th dimensional treasure. "By the way, I heard that there is a swordsman expert behind him?" Fang Yi nodded, "It is said that it is a female swordsman." Lian Xiaotian smiled slightly, "I hope she is not too weak." His words were filled with invincible confidence. Chapter 665. Temple. Yi Xian, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes. 2 rays of sword light flashed in his eyes. At the same time, his body exuded a gloomy aura. Yin Realm. Above the Origin Realm was the Yin Realm, and above the Yin Realm was the Supreme Realm. After reaching the Yin Realm, his divine sense, spiritual force, and spiritual force were suddenly a lot stronger. It could be said that he didn't lack treasures and his body was strong enough, but his realm was weak. Of course, after he started cultivating in adversity, he also gained a lot of benefits. He imagined that when he reached the Emperor Realm, his strength would definitely far surpass the Emperor Realm experts. Although he could kill Emperor Realm experts with his current strength, he still needed some external help. Moreover, because his realm was not high enough, his spiritual force were still a bit weak. Yi Xian stood up, took a deep breath, and walked out of the hall. At the entrance of the hall, Shengguan Xian had been waiting for a long time. Yi Xian looked at Shengguan Xian, and she whispered, "Did you break through?" Yi Xian nodded. Shengguan Xian, smiled, "Congratulations." Yi Xian smiled, "Is there something?" Shengguan Xian nodded, "We have investigated the female assassin you asked the Celestial Arcanum sect to find." Yi Xian asked, "Who?" Shengguan Xian said, "She is from the Black-Yellow Great World, but she is not in the same group as the Northern Region King." Yi Xian frowned, "You mean there are many factions in the Black-Yellow Great World?" Shengguan Xian nodded, "Yes. However, we don't know which factions they are, but our people have already gone to investigate, and we should have news soon. As for the female assassin, she should be from an assassin organization in the Black-Yellow Great World called Heaven Gate." Heaven Gate? Yi Xian asked, "It's an assassin organization?" Shengguan Xian nodded, "It's a very powerful organization, just like our secret guards. The people in the Elysium are extremely good at assassination. If I'm not wrong, they should have their eyes on you. Not only that, but we also received news that everyone in the Black-Yellow Great World should know that you have a 5th dimensional treasure, so." At this point, she glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, "So, there will definitely be many people looking for me in the future, right?" Shengguan Xian nodded. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Shengguan Xian said solemnly, "Aren't you afraid?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Actually, I'm a little panicked." At this point, he opened his palm and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his hand. Looking at the World Prison Pagoda in his hand, Yi Xian said softly, "Brother, because of you, I'm afraid I won't be able to live in peace for the rest of my life. Can you make it up to me?" The prison pagoda trembled, as if in response. Meanwhile, Xiaoling suddenly said, "It asked you to take it back, and it'll compensate you. Go back." The corners of Yi Xian's eyes twitched. This guy wants to return to the fifth dimension. Yi Xian hesitated and said, "Brother Pagoda, do you have any helpers you can call? For example, powerhouses from the fifth dimension, you can call 2 of them." The World Prison Pagoda suddenly jumped with excitement. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Xiaoling, what is it saying?" Xiaoling said, "It wants you to call the sister in the plain dress." The woman in the plain dress. Yi Xian's expression froze. This guy is actually thinking of the woman in the plain dress. Not to mention, he really missed the woman in the plain dress a little. He had made an agreement with the other party to meet again in the clouds. And now, he didn't know how the other party was. Yi Xian put away Xiao Ta, then looked at Shengguan Xian, regarding the mysterious yellow great world. "What is the attitude of the forces in Scandinavia?" Shengguan Xian said in a low voice, "What do you want to say?" Yi Xian said, "You know what I mean." Shengguan Xian said, "Don't worry, they will not have any disloyalty, at least before we die, they will not have any disloyalty." Yi Xian nodded, "Then that's good." At this moment, a black-clothed man suddenly appeared behind Shengguan Xian. The black-clothed man bowed slightly. "Shengguan Kingdom Scholar, they are here." "They are here." Shengguan Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. "So fast?" The black-clothed man nodded slightly. "They will arrive in our chaotic universe tomorrow." Shengguan Xian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian asked, "How many of them are here?" The black-clothed man said in a low voice, "Less than 100, I don't know if there are any hidden ones." "Only 100. Yi Xian and Shengguan Xian were silent. Needless to say, these 100 people are definitely not ordinary people. At this time, Shengguan Xian said, "Give the order." Yi Xian smiled, "Go wait for them outside the chaotic universe." Shengguan Xian looked at Yi Xian, "Okay." She understood Yi Xian's meaning. Yi Xian clearly did not want the battlefield to be in the chaotic universe. The chaotic universe could not withstand such a battle between super powerhouses. Yi Xian said, "Gather everyone." Shengguan Xian opened her palm, a command sword flew out, and a moment later, a golden dragon suddenly flew over from the horizon. Yi Xian and Shengguan Xian came to the golden dragon's back. At this time, several figures appeared in front of Yi Xian. The people who came were Zhou Yafu, Mu Nanji, and the Scandinavian powerhouses. These Scandinavian powerhouses were the strongest group of people in the Scandinavian kingdom. Among them, Yan Dao, Zhen Guandao, and the Scandinavian kingdom martial masters were here. In addition, several Starcloud warships also appeared in the sky. These were the most elite soldiers of the Scandinavian kingdom. This time, it could be said that the elites were all here. Yi Xian looked at Mu Nanji and Zhou Yafu. "You can leave." Mu Nanji smiled. "We were born in the chaotic universe. Now that the chaotic universe is facing an apocalypse, how can we just stand by and watch?" Zhou Yafu nodded. "If the people of the Xuanhuan Great World come to our chaotic universe, this world will be plunged into misery and suffering." Yi Xian's heart was filled with complex emotions. Someone had once told him that many times, the more powerful a person was, the more selfish they were. Reality proved that there were no absolutes in this world. At this time, Tendo appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. She glanced at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian looked at the distant Scandinavian soldiers. Do you know what this trip means? All of the Scandinavian soldiers looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. On this trip, either they die, or we die. We have no path of retreat, and we cannot retreat. We will not rest until we die. We will not rest until we die. The Scandinavian soldiers roared in unison. Imposing manner. Yi Xian smiled. He had to admit that these Scandinavian soldiers were really not bad. They were very courageous. And now, they were about to welcome the strongest enemy of their lives. An expert from the Xuanhuan Great World. Yi Xian gathered his thoughts and lightly stomped his right foot. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden dragon beneath his feet suddenly let out a roar and was about to fly off. But at this moment, a man and two women suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. They were in Lanxiu, Lian Wanli, and Mo Xie. Yi Xian smiled. I was going to inform you. Lian Wanli said indifferently, is that so? Yi Xian was about to speak when another woman appeared in front of him. It was Zhao Mu. And not far behind Zhao Mu was the Southern Sect Martial Master. The Southern Sect Martial Master looked at Yi Xian and smiled. I will naturally do my part. Yi Xian said with a smile, let's go. As soon as he spoke, the golden dragon soared into the sky, and before long, it vanished at the end of the distant starry sky. The elites of the entire chaotic universe were dispatched. In the depths of the starry sky, Yi Xian stood silently on the golden dragon's head with Shangguan Xian, by his side. At this moment, a black-clothed man appeared beside Yi Xian. The black-clothed man bowed slightly to Yi Xian. God Lord, the person who came this time is the Marshal of the Divine Kingdom's northern region, Lian Shaotian. His strength is unknown, and the 100 people he brought should be the Northern Territory's 100-man regiment. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The 100-man regiment? The black-clothed man nodded. This regiment is one of the Northern Territory's 3 great legions. There are less than 100 people in this regiment, but they are the elites of the elites. Moreover, they cultivate the same cultivation technique and use the same treasures. People call them the enemy of 100, which means they are invincible against 100 people. Invincible against 100 people. Yi Xian nodded slightly. How strong are these 100 people? The black-clothed man shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian said, how far away are they from us? The black-clothed man said, half a day's journey. Yi Xian nodded. Scout further. The black-clothed man quietly retreated. On the golden dragon, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Shangguan Xian glanced at Yi Xian, but did not disturb him. After a long time, Yi Xian opened his eyes, a bitter smile on his lips. Pressure. At this moment, he realized that although the position of Divine Lord had the power to overturn the world, the pressure was also enormous. Because behind him were countless soldiers and citizens of the Divine Kingdom. If they were defeated, these people would all die. War was cruel, and the people of the Xianhuang Great World would not be merciful to the chaotic universe. Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. This might be our last battle. The executing heaven sword trembled slightly in response. Yi Xian grinned, then he took out the prison pagoda. Brother Pagoda, I know that even if I die, you will not die. If I die, will you avenge me in the future? The prison pagoda trembled slightly. Xiao Ling said, it said that if you die, it will go to the Xianhuang Great World and open all the seals. Open all the seals. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, it can open all the seals? After a moment of silence, Xiao Ling said, it's not talking anymore. Yi Xian fell silent. Needless to say, the prison pagoda could definitely open those seals. However, it definitely would not do so. Because the imprisoned existences would definitely hold a great grudge against it. In its current state, opening the 8th and 9th floors would most likely be courting death. Yi Xian collected his thoughts, looked at the pagoda in his hand, smiled. In any case, you must remember that if I die, you must avenge me. Ha! The golden dragon sped up. Half a day later. Yi Xian and the others saw Lian Xiaotian and the others from the Xianhuang Great World. When the rock beneath Lian Xiaotian saw the golden dragon beneath Yi Xian, it immediately became excited, its eyes looking as if it was about to devour someone. But the golden dragon was a little uneasy. Lian Xiaotian looked at Yi Xian. I heard that there is a swordsman in a plain dress behind you. Tell her to come out. Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know where she is. Lian Xiaotian thought for a moment, then said, Shenji, find her. As soon as he finished, an old man walked out from behind him. The old man waved his right hand, and a huge altar appeared in front of him. He looked at Yi Xian. Give me one of her items, or her portrait, and I will find her for you. Yi Xian. Chapter 666. They were looking for the woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian fell silent. He hadn't expected that these people would actually be looking for the woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian gazed at Lian Xiaotian. Why are you looking for her? Lian Xiaotian grinned. We like to eliminate weeds by the roots. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian instantly came to an understanding. These people didn't just want to kill Yi Xian, they wanted to kill everyone related to Yi Xian as well. But was it easy to kill the woman in a plain dress? Yi Xian suddenly felt like laughing when he thought about killing the woman in a plain dress. He couldn't deny that Lian Xiaotian was very strong. But the problem was that it was the woman in a plain dress. She was an existence that could suppress the entire world prison. After all, the sixth pavilion was so strong, and he was extremely respectful towards the woman in a plain dress. Suddenly, Lian Xiaotian said, What? You don't dare to let her come out? Yi Xian gazed at Lian Xiaotian. He thought for a moment, and then he waved his right hand. A portrait appeared not too far away from him. It was the portrait of the woman in a plain dress. Her clothes were pure and untainted by even a speck of dust. Yi Xian gazed at Lian Xiaotian. Go ahead and look for her. He actually hoped that the members of the Yellow World would help him find the woman in a plain dress. It had been so long, and he really missed her. Lian Xiaotian gazed at the old man called Shenji. The old man nodded slightly, and then he waved his right hand. The portrait of the woman fell onto the altar. Shenji said, I need some time. Lian Xiaotian asked, How long exactly? Shenji said, It depends on how far away they are. If they're close, then only a moment. If they're far away, then around 2 hours. Lian Xiaotian nodded. Then we'll wait for now. As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian and sized Yi Xian up. Becoming the foster son of our king is the dream of countless people from the Yellow World, yet you refused. You'll regret it. Yi Xian chuckled. I don't have the habit of acknowledging others as my father. Lian Xiaotian smiled. Perhaps you don't know what sort of fortuitous encounter you've lost. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, You're from the northern region. In other words, there's also the southern region and the eastern region? Lian Xiaotian looked at Yi Xian. Why? Are you interested in our black-yellow great world? Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm just a little curious. I'm curious as to why only people from the north have come. Are the others not interested in that supreme treasure or this chaos verse? Lian Xiaotian chuckled. Of course they're interested, but it's us from the northern region who found you first. Moreover, the spatial stronghold here belongs to us. Without our help, it'll take them at least a month or 2 to get here. Of course, those people must have already set off, but by the time they arrive here, everything should have already ended. At this point, he seemed to have thought of something and glanced behind Yi Xian. As far as I know, there's another super genius in God Nation. Why isn't she here? Little 7. Yi Xian's face darkened. Obviously, Little 7's disappearance might not have been caused by the people from the northern region. At this moment, Lian Xiaotian suddenly said, Yi Xian, I have a champion under me who uses a sword as well. Why don't you have a spar? As soon as he finished speaking, a young man appeared not far away from Yi Xian. The young man wore black clothes, and there were several cracks on his face. He looked rather ferocious, and he held a long sword in his left hand. A spar. Yi Xian smiled. Before he could speak, Yuan Yi, who was not far away from him, suddenly said, "I'll do it." Yuan Yi. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Yi, and the latter said, "You're the master god. There's no need for you to fight a small fry." As she spoke, she turned to look at the young man and was about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly said, "I'll do it." Yuan Yi gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled, "I love fighting swordsmen." As he spoke, he gazed at the young man, "I'll give you a handicap." "Bring it on." A handicap. As soon as these words were spoken, all the others were stunned. Isn't Yi Xian being too careless? The young man gazed at Yi Xian. He didn't speak, but his expression had become slightly ferocious. Meanwhile, Lian Xiaotian spoke abruptly, Since City Governor Yi said that he would give you a handicap, then please provide me with your guidance." The man called Ada nodded, and then he suddenly vanished. A ray of black light flashed through the battlefield. The sword god. The expressions of the experts from the divine kingdom instantly became solemn when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Yi Xian didn't dodge at all, nor did he attack. He just allowed Ada's sword to stab into the center of his forehead. The expressions of the experts from the divine kingdom instantly changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. As for Ada, his expression instantly changed violently. In the next moment, hiss! Ada's head flew into the air. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned. What's going on? Lian Xiaotian's eyes narrowed slightly while his expression gradually became solemn. Yi Xian looked at Lian Xiaotian in the distance and said with a smile, "Are there any other sword cultivators? Come at me. I'm invincible. I'm invincible." As soon as these words were spoken, the blood of the experts from the divine kingdom instantly boiled. Needless to say, Yi Xian's instant annihilation of Ada had truly boosted their morale. He'd instantly annihilated a sword god. At this moment, all the experts from the divine kingdom gazed at Yi Xian, and their gazes and hearts had started to change. The strong were respected. This world respected the strong. Lian Xiaotian chuckled lightly as he stood before Yi Xian, "I really underestimated you." As soon as he finished speaking, a violet-clothed man who held a spear in his hand suddenly appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. The violet-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian. "He didn't lose to you because his strength was inferior to you, it was because of your physique, right?" Yi Xian chuckled, "What nonsense are you talking about? Isn't my physique a part of my strength?" The violet-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian, "I'm not a swordsman." "You won't be so lucky." Yi Xian smiled, and then he suddenly vanished in the next moment. A sword howl reverberated through the sky. The violet-clothed man's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly vanished in the next moment. His spear moved like a dragon, and its imposing aura surged like a rainbow. The spectators watched as the spear and sword collided in the most forceful manner possible. Bang! The violet-clothed man's spear instantly exploded into pieces, and then a sword pierced through the center of his forehead. The surroundings suddenly fell silent. It was an instant kill again. The expressions of the experts from Sky-Earth world had become quite unsightly, or perhaps it could be said to be slightly solemn. Yi Xian's strength was a little beyond their expectations. In fact, the experts from God Nation were also a little shocked, because not long ago, Yi Xian did not have any presence at all. But now, Yi Xian's strength was a little abnormal. In front of Yi Xian, the violet-clothed man stared at Yi Xian, "Your sword." Sword. Yi Xian glanced at the executing heaven sword in his hand, and said with a smile, "You want to say that you lost to my sword, not my person, right?" The violet-clothed man said fiercely, "That's how it is." In the instant they exchanged blows just now, Yi Xian's executing heaven sword had directly shattered his spear. In his opinion, he had been suppressed by his equipment. Yi Xian walked in front of the violet-clothed man, and said with a smile, "I just love to see you guys annoyed at me but unable to do anything to me. It's so King comfortable. Ha. Pfft." The violet-clothed man spat out a mouthful of blood, and died. Yi Xian waved his right hand, and the violet-clothed man's storage ring flew into his hand. Then, he looked at Lian Xiaotian not far away, and said with a smile, "Is there anyone else who wants to come out?" Lian Xiaotian's expression was calm, and he looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian laughed heartily. "If there's no one in the younger generation, the older generation can too. It doesn't matter, I don't mind you bullying the weak." Bullying the weak. The experts from the black-yellow great world all had extremely ugly expressions. The younger generation. It was not that there were no super monsters among the younger generation of the black-yellow great world. There were even some in the northern region, but this time, none of them came. Moreover, those super monsters might not necessarily be more monstrous than Yi Xian. It had to be said that among the younger generation, even in the black-yellow great world, Yi Xian was definitely the best. On the rock, Lian Xiaotian turned to look at Shenji on the altar not far away. "How much longer?" Shenji said solemnly, "I have already detected some of her aura, at most an hour." An hour. In the distance, Yi Xian fell silent. Could these guys really find the plain-dressed woman? The plain-dressed woman. Yi Xian looked up at the starry sky. He really did miss the plain-dressed woman. This woman who had helped him countless times. He wondered how she was doing now. At that moment, Lian Xiaotian suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, before I came, my king told me that if you are willing to hand over that treasure and submit to the northern region, we can let you go. Moreover, we will only absorb half of the chaotic universe's spiritual energy, leaving the other half for you. In addition, as long as the chaotic universe pays 50 billion divinity crystals to the northern region every year, we will not plunder the chaotic universe's major factions." Hearing Lian Xiaotian's words, the faces of the experts from the divine kingdom immediately darkened. Absorb half of the chaotic universe's spiritual energy? Pay 50 billion divinity crystals every year? This was tantamount to slowly carving out the chaotic universe's flesh. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, saying nothing. Needless to say, the intentions of the profounder world were extraordinarily sinister. If he agreed, then even though the chaotic universe would be safe for now, the chaotic universe would never be able to rise again. Moreover, paying 50 billion divinity crystals every year meant that everyone in the chaotic universe would be working for the northern region. Most importantly, it would be a humiliation. Even if he agreed, the experts from the divine kingdom wouldn't agree. Of course, he wouldn't agree either. Lian Xiaotian spoke indifferently, "If you don't agree, then the chaotic universe will vanish completely from this world. Which is more important?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Actually, I was a little panicked, but now I suddenly don't." Lian Xiaotian gazed at Yi Xian. "Why?" Yi Xian smiled. "Because you're looking for her. The plain-dressed woman." Lian Xiaotian smiled. "Do you think she can resist us?" Yi Xian roared with laughter. "Take a guess." Lian Xiaotian was just about to speak when the divine armaments suddenly said, "I found her." All of them gazed at the divine armaments. The divine armament raised his head and looked towards the depths of the starry sky. A woman in a plain dress could be faintly seen within his gaze. The divine armament was slightly excited. "I found her. I found her. Follow my Weibo account, on Qinghuan Peak. Check the news, let's make some waves." Chapter 667. Everyone here was looking at the old man called Shenji. Shenji's face was slightly pale. Clearly, he'd exhausted quite a bit of his strength. Suddenly, he formed a seal with his hands, and then he pressed it forward lightly. "The laws of the world, trace. Appear." As soon as he finished speaking, the space before him suddenly trembled violently, and then a scene appeared in front of him. It was a boundless starry sky. The surroundings were deathly silent, and only specks of starlight flickered there. It didn't take long for a woman in a plain dress to appear at the end of his field of vision. She wore a plain dress, had long hair that hung loosely on her shoulders, and the ends of her hair were tied up by a violet ribbon. She was walking towards the distant starry sky. Everyone was looking at the plain-dressed woman. Yi Xian was looking at the woman in a plain dress as well, and he instantly became slightly excited when he saw her. It really is her. Within the tower. The 5th level. Yu, Yanjia, and Yi Ling were looking at the woman as well. Yu's gaze had become extremely solemn as he gazed at her. It's her. Yanjia's eyes were extremely solemn as well. She's still in the 4th dimension. The woman in a plain dress. They weren't unfamiliar with her at all. Because they'd met her when the tower led them to battle those 3 fellows. The strength of those 3 was simply indescribable with words. Among the 3 of them, apart from the sword cultivator in the white robe, the woman in the plain dress and the man in green could be said to be extremely irritable. Especially the woman in the plain dress, her temper was very unstable. Meanwhile, Yu suddenly said, "Something bad is about to happen." Yanjia nodded, "It is." Yi Ling was quite curious. "Big sister of Yu, is big sister Su Chang very strong?" Yu nodded, "Very strong." Yi Ling blinked, "Even stronger than my older brother?" Yu hesitated for a moment and said, "You think your older brother is very strong?" Yi Ling nodded, "He is. I think that he should be able to fight big sister Su Chang." Yu said, "If it's a competition of shamelessness, then your older brother is absolutely invincible." Thick skin. Yi Ling covered her mouth and giggled. Big brother's skin is much thicker than before. As she spoke up to hear, she seemed to have thought of something, and her expression suddenly turned gloomy. Yu asked softly, "What's wrong?" Yi Ling lowered her head slightly. When he was in Qingcheng, he didn't even smile much. At that time, he had a hard time. Yu gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. There must be many people in this world who suffer more than him. Cherish everything you have now, understand? Yi Ling nodded her little head. "I will cultivate well and not burden you in the future." Yu laughed and said, "You're actually very strong, but you don't have any killing intent. You can be kind to your brother and your friends, but you can't be kind to your enemies, understand?" Yi Ling nodded. "Understood." Yu nodded slightly and looked outside the prison pagoda. Outside the pagoda, the image of the woman in the plain dress grew clearer and clearer. At this time, she suddenly stopped and turned around, her eyes narrowed. "Looking for me?" In the distant starry sky of the chaotic universe, the Shinji stared fixedly at the woman in the plain dress. "Do you dare show yourself and fight us?" The woman looked coldly in front of her. "Fight you?" The Shinji laughed coldly. "Don't dare." The corners of the woman's mouth curled up into a savage smile. "What trash?" The Shinji laughed coldly. "If we are trash in your eyes, then why don't you show yourself? Fight me?" The woman in the plain dress took a look at the divine armament, and finally, her gaze fell on Yi Xian. When she saw Yi Xian, her expression instantly became much gentler. Yi Xian hurriedly waved his hand. "Hey!" The woman looked at Yi Xian. "Draw your sword." Before Yi Xian could react, the executing heaven sword at his waist suddenly flew out. Chi! A ray of light flashed. In an instant, the center of Shinji's forehead had been pierced by that ray of light before he could even react. Everyone here was stunned. Lian Xiaotian from Sky Earth World had disbelief written all over his face. The reason he was shocked was because the woman in the plain dress wasn't here. She'd actually killed a Shinji from countless stellar regions away. Moreover, she'd killed him with such ease. After being pierced by the sword, Shinji's eyes widened to the size of copper bells. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Just a moment ago, he didn't even know how he'd been killed. That sword. He couldn't describe it with words. Just like that, the Shenji fell slowly to the ground. Lian Xiaotian gazed at the woman while he slowly clenched his right fist. Meanwhile, the woman was looking at him as well. The corners of Lian Xiaotian's mouth curled up slightly. We underestimated Yi Xian, and we underestimated you a little as well. The woman's face was emotionless. A little? As she spoke, her gaze gradually turned icy cold. You'll never know how weak you are. Lian Xiaotian roared with laughter. Weak? While I can't be considered as the strongest expert in the Northern Territory, no one has ever said that I'm weak. As he spoke, he gazed at the woman and said, "Come, use that move of yours again. Let's see if you can kill me." As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from within him. Bang! As soon as this aura appeared, the starry sky and the surroundings started to tremble violently. It was like an earthquake, and it was extremely shocking. The expressions of the experts from the divine kingdoms instantly turned solemn when they witnessed this scene. Lian Xiaotian's strength absolutely crushed them. Yi Xian had a rather solemn expression on his face as well. Earlier, he'd intended to kill Lian Xiaotian with the boundless sword, but now that he'd witnessed Lian Xiaotian's strength, he wasn't fully confident in his ability to kill Lian Xiaotian. However, he was over 70% confident in his ability. The boundless sword. This sword technique disregarded one's realm of cultivation. Of course, even he wasn't absolutely confident in his ability. This sword technique was formidable, but he didn't dare say that it was invincible. Earlier, he'd intended to execute the boundless sword because he'd been prepared to risk his life. However, he hadn't expected that these experts from Profoundness World would actually be looking for the woman. That was something he hadn't expected at all. Yi Xian looked at the woman in the plain dress. Everyone present was looking at the woman in the plain dress. Lian Xiaotian gazed at her and laughed savagely. Bring it on. Draw your sword. My Profoundness World can even defy the heavens, let alone you. The woman remained expressionless. There are exceptions to defying the heavens. Defying me? There's absolutely no chance of survival. As soon as she finished speaking, she pressed her fingers together and pointed lightly. The execution heaven sword in front of Yi Xian trembled violently, and then a sword howl shot into the sky. In the next moment, it slashed directly towards Lian Xiaotian. Lian Xiaotian had a ferocious expression on his face as he suddenly pressed his palms together and slashed them forward. Bang! A force that could obliterate the world swept down from his palms. As soon as this force appeared, the space in an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers was directly blasted apart. Moreover, the others in the surroundings retreated repeatedly at this moment. That force was unstoppable. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at the executioner sword. It didn't take long for the execution heaven's sword to slash against that force. Hiss! In the blink of an eye, the force vanished into thin air. In the next moment, the surroundings suddenly fell silent. A sword had stabbed into the center of Lian Xiaotian's forehead. Everyone in the surroundings fell silent. Lian Xiaotian's eyes were blank, and he was petrified. The woman gazed at Lian Xiaotian, and Lian Xiaotian's face was covered in disbelief. How? How could this be possible? No. That's absolutely impossible. He'd never imagined that he wouldn't even be able to resist a single attack from her. The woman disregarded Lian Xiaotian, and she gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned, long time no see. She gazed at Yi Xian for a long time, and then she spoke softly in the end, your strength is barely passable. Yi Xian was instantly overjoyed, I've been working very hard on my cultivation. The woman shook her head, it's still slightly insufficient. Yi Xian nodded, I know. I'll continue working hard. The woman nodded slightly, and then she suddenly gazed at the execution heaven sword. The sword trembled as if it was slightly fearful. Fearful. Yi Xian fell silent. He'd never seen the execution heaven sword fear anything, but it was actually afraid of the woman. So, it was definitely related to her in the past. The woman gazed at the sword. I never expected that you would follow him. The execution heaven's sword trembled slightly, and then it emanated a low sword howl. The woman suddenly opened her palm, and then a sword appeared in her grasp. She gazed at the sword in her hand. You know what I mean. The sword trembled slightly. A short moment later, it transformed into a ray of light that shot forward, and it didn't take long for it to vanish into the starry sky. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Do you recognize this sword?" The woman glanced at the heavenly pearl sword, and then she said, "This sword and my sword." As she spoke up to hear, she suddenly frowned. "Come out." As soon as she finished speaking, a sword suddenly flew out from within Yi Xian's world prison pagoda. Seven's sword. Seven's sword trembled, and then it hid behind Yi Xian. It was even more terrifying than the heavenly pearl sword. The woman gazed at Seven's sword with an expressionless face. "You're here as well." Seven's sword trembled, and it was even more afraid. Yi Xian looked at the woman. "They seem to be very afraid of you." The woman in the plain dress looked at Yi Xian. "These two swords, my sword, and another sword used to be one sword, but it was divided into four for some reason." Yi Xian was stunned. "For swords? One?" The woman nodded. "They were originally one, but now, they each have their own sword Dao lives." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "What would happen if these four swords were combined?" The woman looked at Yi Xian. "They would become the first sword." Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "What sword?" The woman said, "Seeking defeat." Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he asked, "Seeking defeat?" The woman nodded. "That year, I was invincible, and no one was a match for her. So she named it Seeking Defeat." As she spoke up to hear, she looked at Yi Xian. "You can try to combine them. However, you can only combine the swords, not the spirits. In other words, you can combine them, and you can split them. They will still be themselves." Yi Xian asked, "What would happen if I combine them?" The woman fell silent for a moment, and then she said, "Perhaps you'll be able to meet her." You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.